Inshallah, we're about to begin our next few sessions on the story from the Egyptian author, Muṣṭafā Luṭfī al-Manfalūṭī. But before I begin, inshallah, I just want to mention a couple of things that came up in the comments of the previous video. Some of our viewers might be wondering and thinking that why even do this story? Why not just stick to the stories of the prophets and the stories of the companions? The reason is because in the last 150 years, there's been no author that writes this well. Okay, and his style is extremely rhythmic, and it has a Quranic cadence, and the language is very structured, but not only that, but it's charged with meaning. But it's more than just entertainment or like a modern romance story. There's all kinds of benefit associated with his writing style, and if you were to compare him to maybe some of the older authors like al-Hariri or Badi' al-Zaman, al-Hamadani, that wrote Maqamat, that was more performance Arabic, and they wrote it in order to impress, right? And it's very cryptic and it's like puzzle kind of language. But instead, al-Manfalūṭī here, sentence by sentence, he writes in a way that actually lands, and it gives you an idea of how proper Fusha Arabic is expressed. So if you want to expand your range and be able to express, then this absolutely should be part of your fluency. And there's a precedent for it, because over 1,000 years, our scholars unanimously have agreed that studying Jahili poetry is something admirable. And if you look at the pre-Islamic poetry, then there's themes contained within that poetry that's far more problematic than anything that we'll find in this story here, right? So we're doing it for the Arabic value, and the value is considerable. Like I said, pound for pound, al-Manfalūṭī is the best author in the last 150 years, and even compared to the greats like al-Hariri and Badi' al-Zaman, from the student benefit metric, studying him is a far better use of time than going through some of those earlier works by those scholars. If you missed the earlier video, in order to get you up to speed, I can give you a brief summary. Basically, the story follows a young girl by the name of Marguerite, who grew up poor, and she was forced into a life of sin in order to survive. Quickly, she rises up the ranks and attains a level of glamour and wealth and attention, but then she's not happy with her lifestyle, and she's living a life of loneliness and regret until she meets Armand, who is a young gentleman who sees her for who she is, and they fall in love, and they're living happily in the countryside for some period of time. And then life begins to unravel, and Armand's money begins running out, and his father enters into the picture. And his father wants to take him back home because he's more concerned about reputation, and he's more concerned about his future, and this is where the real tension begins. I'll throw the link below to the earlier few sessions. Again, every sentence here is extremely valuable from any perspective you look at. I mean, this is some of the best Arabic that's been written that a student of knowledge can study. This is advanced Arabic for beginners. And that might sound like an oxymoron, like advanced Arabic for beginners, because you're seeing me do it. Just watch the video from start to finish, and then once you're done with it, come back to it again. And this time, try on your own. Try to get through the paragraphs on your own, and get through 2-3 pages, and then watch the corresponding delivery where I delivered the same sentences, and then go back and forth like this. And at some point, inshallah, you'll reach a level of fluency where you can start reading independently on your own. And then the method of taking AI and ChatGPT and other sources in order to get through the obscure vocabulary would be more appropriate. Okay, so again, this is advanced Arabic for beginners. And you won't find anyone that takes these intermediate and advanced works of Arabic literature and creates the kind of videos we're creating. And the reason is because they don't view extensive guided reading as an integral part in the roadmap to fluency like we do. Okay, so we have a particular approach that we follow here on this channel, and we vary between the various kinds of books that we study, and some of it's very simple, like the Stories of the Prophets is an incredibly simple book. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, And if you subscribe, then when I create community posts that talk about some of these things, they'll appear in your feed. And if you haven't gone through the 3-hour workshop where we front load the most essential aspects of grammar and morphology that's needed in order to benefit from any reading, then do that first. So I'll throw a link to that as well in the description below. So with all of that out of the way, let's begin. The author, he says, قال دوفال لولده. So Dufal, Armand's father, says to his son, لقد كذبت علي كثيرا يا أرمان. That you have lied to me a lot, O Armand. وما كنت قبل اليوم كذابا ولا خادعا. And before today you were not a liar, and neither were you deceptive. ورضيت لنفسك بحياة. And you are now content for yourself to live a life كنت أضن الناس بنفسك, that you were the most protective of people, to have that kind of life for yourself earlier. So now you've adopted a lifestyle that previously you would shun and you would not go near, and you would protect yourself from ever falling into that life, and now here you are jumping into it freely, and you're happy with it. ورضيت لنفسك بحياة كنت أضن الناس بنفسك على مثلها من قبل ومزقت بيدك ذلك القناع الجميل من الحياء الذي لا يزال مسبلا على وجهك وأصبحت تتبذل في العيش مع امرأة عاهرة كل ما لها من الشأن عند نفسها. And then he continues. So he's addressing his son, and clearly he's not happy, he's upset. And he says, you weren't a liar ever before, and now here you are lying to me a lot. And وَرَضِيتَ لِنَفْسِكَ بِحَيَاةٍ, and you are content and happy with a particular life. كُنْتَ أَضَنَّ النَّاسِ بِنَفْسِكَ عَلَى مِثْلِهَا مِنْ قَبْلُ, that you were the most protective of people of having that kind of life for yourself before. So this word here, أَضَنَّ, is the ism al-tafdil of ضَنِين, and he's going to use this word several times, and inshallah it will become clear what the purpose of it is. So ضَنِين is when you're miserly and you're protective and you're trying to you care a lot about not having that life, and here you are having it. وَمَزَّقْتَ, and you have torn and ripped apart with your own hand ذَلِكَ الْقِنَاعَ الْجَمِيلَ, that beautiful veil of modesty that was always draped over your face. لَا يَزَالُ مُسْبَلًا عَلَى وَجْهِكَ وَأَصْبَحْتَ تَتَبَذَّلُ, and you have began this life of this lowly life. You have adopted and engaged in this lowly life. تتبذل في العيش مع امرأة عاهرة, along with a whore, or along with a harlot woman. كل ما لها من الشأن عند نفسها, that the extent of status she has according to herself, about herself. وعند الناس جميعا, and also the extent of status that she has in the estimation of others, is that she is refused from the refuse of men. Refuse, whatever the word is. In other words, she's like the crumbs of the table, or she's like a discarded kind of fudla, waste from the waste of the sinful people. Okay, أنها نفاية من نفايات الرجال وفضلة من فضلات الفساق وفتات المائدة العامة, and she's the crumbs, leftover crumbs from the public dinner table on which all people sit morning and evening. Okay, so let me reread that. I guess I'll reread it from the beginning and then we'll continue. So we're trying to get some rhythm going here. قال دوفال لولده لقد كذبت علي كثيرا يا أرمان وما كنت قبل اليوم كذابا ولا خادعا ورضيت لنفسك بحياة كنت أظن الناس بنفسك على مثلها من قبل. Okay, so this word حياة is موصوف, and this entire sentence is describing it. A particular life, the like of which, and the pronoun is there, على مثلها, the like of which you were never content with for yourself ever before. ومزقت بيدك ذلك القناع الجميل من الحياء الذي لا يزال مسبلا على وجهك. Isbal means to drape. That beautiful veil of modesty that has always been draped over your face, you've ripped it apart. وَأَصْبَحْتَ تَتَبَذَّلُ, and you have now began degrading yourself in living with a harlot. مع امرأة عاهرة كل ما لها من الشأن عند نفسها, the sum total of value that she has in her own estimation and also in the estimation of all of the people is that she is a nifayatu min nifayati rijal. She is nifayatu min nifayati rijal. She is refuse of the refuse of men. Wa fudlatu min fudalat al-fusaq, and she is the waste of the sinful degenerates. Wa fattatu al-ma'idati al-amma, and she is the crumbs of the public dinner table. التي يجلس عليها الناس جميعا صباحهم ومساءهم, on which all people sit morning and evening. فحسبك هذا, so let this be enough. وقم الساعة, and stand up right now. لتعد نفسك للسفر, so that you can prepare yourself to travel. معي إلى Nice, to Nice, okay, which I guess is one of the suburbs of Paris. فلست بتاركك بعد اليوم في هذا البلد ساعة واحدة, because I will not leave you after today in this city for even a single hour. ساعة واحدة. فرفع أرمان رأسه إلى أبيه, so Armand raised his head to look at his father. وقال له, and said to him بصوت هادئ مطمئن, with a calm, tranquil voice, a low voice. لا أستطيع يا أبتاه, I am not able, O father. فنظر إليه أبوه نظرة شزراء, so his father directed towards him a sharp gaze. وقال له, and said to him, وتلك سيئة أخرى, and this is a further disgrace. فقد أصبحت لا تعبأ بي, because you are no longer concerned about me. ولا تبالي, and you are not concerned بمخالفة أمري, of opposing my command. من أجل امرأة ساقطة, on account of a fallen woman. لا شأن لها معك, she has no relation with you except to play with your intellect. إلا أن تعبث بعقلك وتسلبك مالك وشرفك, and to snatch away from you your wealth and your honor. وتفسد عليك حاضرك ومستقبلك, and to corrupt and ruin for you your present and your future. So I'll reread that again. فنظر إليه أبوه نظرة شزراء, فنظر إليه أبوه نظرة شزراء وقال له وتلك سيئة أخرى, and he said to him, this is a further disgrace. فقد أصبحت لا تعبأ بي ولا تبالي بمخالفة أمري من أجل امرأة ساقطة لا شأن لها معك إلا أن تعبث بعقلك. تعبث means to play, toy with your intellect. وتسلبك, and this is from salb, which means to take away, to remove, to snatch, to steal from you your wealth and your honor. وتسلبك مالك وشرفك وتفسد عليك حاضرك ومستقبلك. قال لا يا أبتا, he said, no, O dear father. إنها ليست بعابثة ولا خادعة, she is not one who toys, and she is not deceptive, she's not deceiving. ولكنها تحبني حبا جما لم يحبه أحد من قبلها أحدا. However, she really does love me a lot that no person, no individual has ever loved anyone before. وأحسب أني إن فارقتها, and I fear and I believe that if I leave her قتلتها, I would be killing her. وجنيت عليها جناية, and I would be committing against her a crime لا يفارقني الندم عليها, regard of which would not leave me until death. In other words, I will take that regret to my grave. قال ذلك ما يخدع به أمثالها أمثالك. He said that's the kind of deception that people like her use to deceive people like you. فليس للنساء العاهرات, because harlot women do not have hearts with which they would love, which they would love. Okay, فليس للنساء العاهرات قلوب يحببن بها بل لهن ألسن يختلن بها الرجال. Rather, they have tongues through which they deceive men. ويسبلنها حجبا, and they use their tongues in order to create veils between men, to the point that يظن كل واحد منهم أنه الأثير عندها, that every one of them truly believes that he is the most special according to her. وصاحب الحظوة لديها, and is the person that has full exclusive attention with her. من دون أصحابه جميعا, in exclusion of all other people. قال ربما كان ذلك شأنها قبل اليوم. He said, perhaps that's how she was before today. أما اليوم فهي لا تحب أحدا غيري. As for today, she doesn't love anyone other than me. بل لا تعرف أحدا سوايا. In fact, she doesn't know anyone other than me. فهي تعيش عيشة تشبه عيشة النساء الشريفات. Because she lives a life that resembles the life of honorable, respectful women. نساء الشريفات. بل أشرف من عيشة الكثيرات منهن. In fact, it's a life that's more honorable than the life of many of the نساء الشريفات. لأن الخليلة التي تخلص لخليلها, because the mistress that is loyal to her beloved, to her lover, أشرف من الزوجة التي تخون زوجها, has more respect and honor and is more dignified than the wife that betrays her husband. وأخشى إن فارقتها, and I am fearful that if I abandon her, أن تثور في نفسها ثورة من ثورات اليأس, that a fit of despair will surface within her soul, فتردها إلى تلك الحياة الأولى, that would then take her back to that earlier life of hers, the life of evil and corruption, حياة الشر والفساد والشقاء, and misery. Okay, so I'll reread that again. قال ربما كان ذلك شأنها قبل اليوم. She might have been like that before. أما اليوم فهي لا تحب أحدا غيري, بل لا تعرف أحدا سوايا. فهي تعيش عيشة تشبه عيشة النساء الشريفات. She lives a life that resembles the life of honorable, dignified women. بل أشرف من عيشة الكثيرات منهن. لأن الخليلة التي تخلص لخليلها أشرف. Because the mistress that's loyal to her lover is more dignified من الزوجة التي تخون زوجها, than the wife that betrays her husband. وأخشى إن فارقتها أن تثور في نفسها ثورة من ثورات اليأس. And I am fearful that if I abandon her, that within her will surface a fit of despair. Okay, ثورة من ثورات اليأس فتردها إلى تلك الحياة الأولى, that would turn her back to that earlier life, حياة الشر والفساد والشقاء والعذاب, the life of misery and punishment. بعد ما استنقذت نفسها, after she has freed herself from that. قال Duval said, وهل ترى أن وظيفة الرجل الشريف في هذه الحياة إصلاح النساء الفاسدات? Do you think that the sole task and the job of the noble person in this life is to reform fallen women? قال ذلك خير له. Armand replied, and he said that's better for him than for his task and his job within this life to be seducing honorable women. إفسادهن. فإن الأشراف في هذا العصر, because noble, quote unquote noble people, في هذا العصر, in this day and age, يفخرون, boast and are happy بإفساد النساء الصالحات, are happy with seducing and corrupting, ruining righteous women, واستدراجهن إلى مواطن الفسق والفجور, and gradually bringing them to the places of sin and corruption. وإصلاح المرأة الفاسدة أدنى إلى الشرف من إفساد المرأة الصالحة, and reforming a corrupt woman is more closer to dignity than ruining a righteous woman. Okay, so I'll reread that again. قال ذلك خير له من أن تكون وظيفته إفسادهن. فإن الأشراف في هذا العصر يفخرون بإفساد النساء الصالحات واستدراجهن إلى مواطن الفسق والفجور. وإصلاح, so this is a new sentence, وإصلاح, and I detected that, so I'm reading it with Rafa, as you can see, right? وإصلاح المرأة الفاسدة أدنى إلى الشرف من إفساد المرأة الصالحة. So that's the mubtada, and أدنى إلى الشرف onwards would be the khabar. reforming a corrupt woman is more closer to dignity and honor than ruining a righteous woman. قال لقد أصبحت كثير الرحمة يا أرمان. He said, "Oh Armand, you've become very merciful." قال لم لا أرحم فتاة مريضة مسكينة. He said, "Why would I not have mercy on a sick, ill, poor girl ليس لها في الناس, that doesn't have among the people من يعولها, anyone to look after her, من ذي قرابة, from among the relatives, أو ذي رحم, or from the close kin. وقد نزل داؤها من صدرها, and her disease has penetrated her chest, or has occupied within her chest a place from which it doesn't leave. لا يبرحها ولا يتحلل عنها, and does not subside, does not go away. إلا أن يهدى عنها حينا, except to subside for one moment and reawaken for many other moments. إلا أن يهدى عنها حينا ويستيقظ أحيانا. So يهدأ, it subsides, يستيقظ, it resurfaces أحيانا. فهي تكابد الألم مرة والخوف من الألم أخرى. So she struggles with pain once, at certain times, and fear of pain at other times. So she's never at rest. ولا عزاء لها في حالتيها, and she has nothing to comfort her in these two situations of hers. إلا هذه السعادة التي تتوهمها في الحب, except for this happiness that she imagines exists within love. وترى أنها ناعمة بها, and she believes that she's happy with this love. فإن فقدتها فقدت كل شيء. So if she loses it, if she loses this سعادة, then she's literally lost everything. فقدت كل شيء في الحياة وعظم حزنها, and her grief would be intolerable. It would be like too much. وبؤسها, her حزن and her misery will just be through the roof. وثقلت وطأة الداء عليها, and the affliction of disease would be too heavy for her to bear. حتى كادت تأتي على البقية الباقية من حياتها, to the point that it might even remove whatever small amount of life she has left. فدعني معها, so leave me with her, يا أبتاه عاما آخر, for one further year, أو عامين, or maybe 2 years, أهون عليها فيهما شقاءها, in which 2 years, in which I will lessen from her misery. I'll remove from her some of that misery. فربما كان ذلك آخر ما قدر لها أن تقضيه من أيامها في هذا العالم. Because perhaps this might be the last of what she has left, the last of what is decreed for her to live from among her days within this world. In other words, she might only have a couple of years left, so let me live with her for these last couple of years. ثم أعود بعد ذلك إليك, and then I can return back to you. هادئ القلب, with a clear conscience. ساكن الضمير means clear conscience. هادئ القلب, with a content heart and a clear conscience. راضيا عن نفسي وعن عملي, content and happy with myself and with what I've done. أبكيها بدموع الحزن لا بدموع الندم. I will cry over her with tears of grief and not tears of regret. ويهون ويهون وجدي عليها كلما ذكرتها أنني ويهون. This is ويهون. It's from that same verb that came أهون عليها. Okay, so hopefully you can see how reading without vowels is possible. So post in the comments. We're probably half an hour in right now, and now might be a good time to pause the video and post a comment. Tell me what you think about this, and also the value in being able to read without vowels. Okay, because people are curious, how is it possible to read without vowels? So you need to know hana yahunu and hawwana yuhawinu. So some of it's vocabulary and the verbs, and being able to detect what verb form it is, and stepping back and looking at the sentences, where they start, where they end. So some of the punctuation here is helpful, but we don't rely on the punctuation. Okay, so that, I guess that will be a topic for another day. Let's continue. فَرُبَّمَا كَانَ ذَلِكَ آخِرَ مَا قُدِّرَ لَهَا أَن تَقْضِيَهُ مِنْ أَيَّامِهَا فِي هَذَا الْعَالَمِ. This may be the final days that she's living within this world. So let me stay with her, and then I'll return back to you with a content heart and a clear conscience, happy with myself and happy with what I've done. I will cry over her tears of grief and not tears of regret. ويهون وجدي عليها كلما ذكرتها أنني لم أخنها ولم أغدر بعهدها. So this أنني لم أخنها ولم أغدر بعهدها is the fa'il for the verb يهون, and wajdi is not the fa'il. Wajdi is the maf'ul bihi. And the thing that will lessen my pain over her, over having lost her, my pain over having lost her, every time I remember her, would be the fact that I did not betray her, and I was not treacherous with her covenant. In other words, I was loyal to her, and this loyalty is the thing that will reduce the pain of not being with her. فَأَطْرَقَ دُفَالْ هُنَيْهَةً. So Duval lowered his head for a moment. كَأَنَّمَا يُعَالِجُ فِي نَفْسِهِ هَمًّا مُعْتَلِجًا, as if he's undergoing some pain of his own, some worry and concern. ثم رفع رأسه, and then he raised his head. ونظر إلى ولده نظرة تشبه نظرة العطف والرحمة, and he looked to his son in a way that resembled a look of compassion and mercy. وقال, and he said to him, لا أستطيع أن أسافر بدونك يا بني. I am not able to travel without you, O son. فحسبي ما كابدت من الألم لفراقك قبل اليوم. For enough for me, hasbi, enough for me, is all of that pain that I've already experienced due to being separated from you before today. وَقَدْ تَرَكْتُ أُخْتَكَ وَرَائِي, and I have left your sister behind me, تَنْدُبُكَ, grieving over you, وَتَبْكِي عَلَيْكَ, and crying صَبَاحَهَا وَمَسَاءَهَا, morning and evening, وَتَحِنُّ إِلَى لِقَائِكَ, and she's desperate to meet you, similar to how the thirsty person is desperate to find water. إلى الورود. Okay, حنين الظامئ إلى الورود. Wurud is when you're traveling and you stop in order to get water from a well. وَاعْلَمْ أن جميع ما تعتذر به عن نفسك في هذا الشأن لا يغني عنك ولا عني شيئا يوم يقول الناس كلمتهم التي لا بد أن يقولوها غدا. So this should be يقولوها. Okay, it says يقولها. It should be يقولو, like plural masculine conjugation, because it's talking about people, right? وربما قال كثير منهم قبل اليوم. Okay, he says وَاعْلَمْ أن جميع ما تعتذر به عن نفسك. Know that all of these excuses that you're making for yourself in this regard, لا يغني عنك, will not avail you, and also will not avail me at all. يوم يقول الناس, on the day when the people will say their thing that they'll absolutely say tomorrow. When they speak their statement that it's inevitable that they'll say it. لا بد أن يقولوها غدا. وربما قال كثير منهم قبل اليوم, and perhaps many of them have already said it. إن أرمان دوفال, that Armand Duval, سلالة آل تاليران, that belonging to the noble family and lineage of Taliran, يعيش مع امرأة مومس, is living with a prostitute woman في بيت واحد, in the same house. فعود إلى نفسك, so come back to your senses, يا بني, واستلهم الله الرشد يلهمك. Okay, so this is like the cadence that I was talking about, that his style of writing, I mean the theme, like I'm not trying to make a comparison here, but the way he writes is like, it's Quranic Arabic, it's Fusha Quranic Arabic. Now the theme is, we're not condoning it. Like, I mean, this is not like, okay, like, I mean, I've already talked about this in the introduction, I think it's fine, but his style of writing benefits the student of Quranic Arabic more than any other writing, period. Okay, as you can see, right? So he's saying, فَعُودِ إِلَى نَفْسِكَ يَا بُنَيَّ, so come back to your senses. وَاسْتَلْهِمِ اللَّهَ الرُّشْدَ يُلْهِمْكَ, and seek from Allah seek from Allah inspiration for guidance, He will inspire you. He will guide you. يلهمك. ولا تجعل لهواك سبيلا على عقلك. And do not give your passion any pass to your intellect, over your intellect. ودع هذه الحياة الساقطة التي يحياها من ليست له همة مثل همتك ولا مجد ولا بيت مثل مجدك وبيتك. And leave this fallen lifestyle that those people that do not have the kind of aspiration that you have live, nor those people that don't have aspirations similar to yours and do not have honor and respect and do not belong to a household similar to the household that you belong to. Leave that fallen lifestyle that such people live. وَإِنِّي تَارِكُكَ الْآنِ, and I will now leave you alone. وَذَاهِبٌ عَنْكَ, and I will go away from you. لِبَعْدِ شَأْنِي, in order to run some errands or in order to take care of some affairs. لِتَخْلُوَ بِنَفْسِكَ سَاعَةً, in order that you can spend some time in solitude, a moment. تَسْتَرِدُّ فِيهَا مَا عَزَبَ عَنْكَ مِنْ صَوَابِكَ. Okay, beautiful Arabic. He says, لِتَخْلُوَ بِنَفْسِكَ سَاعَةً, in order that you can be alone, for a moment. Okay, yeah. So in order that you can remain alone for a moment, in which you can bring back some of your clear thinking that has abandoned you, that has moved away from you. You can attract it back to you. ثم أعود إليك بعد قليل, and then I'll return back to you after some period of time. لأسمع منك الكلمة التي أرجو أن تكون شفاء نفسي ورواء غلتي. And then I'll return back to you بعد قليل, after a short period of time, so that I can hear from you the words that I hope will be the cure for my soul and will be the quenching of my thirst. أرجو أن تكون الشفاء نفسي ورواء غلتي. ثم تركه ونزل, and then he left him. ونزل, and came down. Okay, I guess they were in the upper floor of the hotel. فمشى إلى قهوة قريبة من الفندق, and then he walked and went to a cafe that was close to the hotel. فكتب فيها لبعض الناس كتابا خاصا. So sitting there at the cafe, he wrote for some people some personal letter. ثم طاف ببعض أصدقائه الذين يعرفهم في باريس, and then he went on visitation to some of his friends that he recognized, that he knew in Paris. فزارهم زيارة طويلة, and he visited them for long periods of time. فلم يعود إلى الفندق, and he did not return back to the hotel حتى أظل الليل, until the night had entered. فرأى أرمان لا يزال في مكانه, so he saw Armand in his same place, still in the same place. فسأله ماذا رأى, so he asked him what his opinion is, what does he believe. فلم يجبه إلا بدموعه, so he did not respond to him except with his tears. تنحدر على خديه تحدر القطر على أوراق الزهر. So he did not respond to his father except with his tears that were dripping down his cheeks, similar to how dew drips down the petals of a flower. على أوراق الزهر. وجثى بين يديه يستعطفه ويسترحمه, and he kneeled down in front of his father, begging for mercy and compassion. يستعطفه ويسترحمه. ويكشف له من خبيئة نفسه ما كان يكتمه من قبل, and revealing to him the secret of his soul that previously he was concealing. ما كان يكتمه من قبل. يقول, saying, والله يا أبتي, by Allah, O father, لو علمت أني أستطيع الحياة بدونها لفارقتها. If I knew and if I believed that I would be able to live without her, then I would leave her. برا بك, out of loyalty to you, وإيثارا لطاعتك, and preferring your obedience over my own benefit. ولكني أعلم, however I know, أني إن فعلت فقد وضعت أمري في موضع الغرر. However I know that if I were to do that, then I would be placing my own affair in a very risky situation, reckless, risky situation, في موضع الغرر. وخاطرت بعقلي, and I would be gambling with my intellect and with my own life. مخاطرة لا أعلم ماذا يكون حظي فيها, in a game that I do not know what my outcome would be in that gamble. So I would be gambling with my intellect and with my life in a way that I am unsure, and I do not know what my prospect of winning is in that game. ولا أحسبه إلا أسوأ الحظين, and I only believe that it is the worst of the two possibilities, and أنحس النجمين, and it's the most wretched of the two turns, I guess. So it would be the worst outcome. ولو أن أحدا من قبلي استطاع أن يدفع هواه عن قلبه أو يمحو ما قدر له في صحيفة قضائه من شقاء الحب وبلائه لسلكت سبيله التي سلكها. And if there were anyone before me that successfully was able to remove hawa from their heart, remove passion from their heart, أو يمحو ما قدر له في صحيفة قضائه من شقاء الحب, and wipe away the misery of love and the tribulation of love that has been decreed for them in the preserved tablet, لَسَلَكْتُ سَبِيلَهُ, then I would follow the same path that person followed. In other words, if you give me some instructions, I'm more than willing to follow those instructions. وَلَكِنَّهُ بَلَاءٌ, however, this is a tribulation, بُلِيتُ بِهِ لِحِينٍ أُرِيدَ لِي, that I am being tested with for a period of time that has been intended for me, and I have no فَلَا رَأْيَ لِي فِي رَدِّهِ, so I have no power in doing anything otherwise. فَلَا رَأْيَ لِي, I have no opinion of my own in removing it. وَلَا حِيلَةَ لِي فِي اتِّقَائِهِ, and there's no strategy for me in protecting myself from it. وَقَدْ نَزَلَتْ هَذِهِ الْفَتَاةُ مِنْ نَفْسِي مَنْزِلَةً هِيَ مَنْزِلَةُ الْحَيَاةِ مِنَ الْجِسْمِ, and this girl has occupied within my soul a position that is similar to the rank of life within a body. وَالْغَيْث مِنَ التُّرْبَةِ الْفَاحِلَةِ, and rain with respect to fertile soil. فَإِن كُنْتَ لَا بُدَّ آخِذِي, so if you absolutely have to take me, then take with you a lifeless body, لا حراك به, that has no movement, وَنُبْتَةً ذَاوِيَةً لا حياة فيها, and a withered away dead plant that has no life in it. فَوَضَعَ أَبُوهُ يَدَهُ عَلَى عَاتِقِهِ, so his father placed his hand on Armand's shoulder. وَقَالَ لَهُ, and he said, قُمِ الْآنْ يَا بُنَيَّ, stand up now, O son, وَاذْهَبْ لِشَأْنِكَ, and do what you need to do. وَاذْهَبْ لِشَأْنِكَ وَعُدْ إِلَيَّ صَبَاحَ الْغَدْ, and return back to me tomorrow morning, لِأُتَمِّمَ حَدِيثِي مَعَكَ, in order that I may complete this conversation with you. وَأَرْجُو أَن تَكُونَ فِي غَدِكَ, again, Manfalūṭī, again, his style. Like, I mean, you're not going to find this kind of Arabic anywhere. Period. Now, if there's any of our viewers that reads more than I do, and if you have any author that you think may match the style of this author, then please let me know in the comments below. But I don't think there's Najib, there's like Taha Hussein, and there's other contemporaries of Manfalūṭī, but they're nowhere near him in terms of style, in terms of the power of his language and his prose and his rhythmics, his cadence. None of that. It just doesn't exist. Period. So he's top of the food chain. I mean, pound for pound, best writer in the last 150 years. وَأَرْجُو أَن تَكُونَ فِي غَدِكَ خَيْرًا مِنْكَ فِي أَمْسِكَ, and I am hopeful that in your tomorrow you'll be better than you are in your yesterday. فَخَرَجَ مَحْزُونًا مُكْتَئِبًا, so he left grief-stricken and محزونا مكتئبا, grief-stricken and sad. يمشي مشية الظاهر المشدوه, walking absent-mindedly mashdu and not fully himself, I guess. لا يرى ما أمامه, not seeing what's in front of him, ولا يشعر بما حوله, and not sensing his surroundings and what's around him. حتى رأى عربة فركبها, until he saw a carriage and he got on it, إلى بوجفال, taking him to Bougival. حتى بلغها بعد هدأة من الليل, until he reached after a good portion of the night had already passed. فلم يرى مرغريت في شرفة البيت, so he did not see Marguerite in the balcony تنتظره, waiting for him as she normally did كعادتها. فدخل عليها غرفتها, so he entered upon her in her room. فرآها مكبة, so he saw her fallen over her table. مكبة على منضدة بين يديها كأنما هي نائمة أو ذاهلة, as if she's sleeping or she's drowsy. ذاهلة. فشعرت به عند دخوله, so she sensed him coming when he entered. فنهضت, so she sprung up. مذعورة, alarmed. متلهفة, and anxious. فخيل إليه, so he imagined when she was getting up, أنه لمح في يدها, that he saw in her hand رسالة, a letter, تضم عليها أصابعه, that she was clutching with her fingers. فظنها بعد تلك الرسائل, so he thought that it must be one of those letters, التي كان يرسلها إليها المركيز Jean Philippe, that is one of those letters that Marquise Jean Philippe would send to her from time to time. من حين إلى حين, وهو فتى من أبناء الأشراف الأثرياء, and he is one of the young men belonging to a noble, wealthy household. كان يحبها في عهدها الأول, that was passionately in love with her in her earlier life, حبا شديدا. وينفق عليها أموالا طائلة, and he would spend on her large sums of money. فلما انقطعت عنه لم ينقطع منها أمله, so when she severed relations with him, his hope did not sever and did not stop. فظل يرسل إليها رسائل كثيرة, so he kept sending to her many letters. يعرض فيها حبه, in which he would present his love and his wealth, and ويمنيها الأماني الحسان, and he would give her all kinds of beautiful hopes. في عودتها إليه, that if she were to return back to him, واتصال حياتها بحياته, and she would reconnect her life with his life. فكانت تمزقها عند اطلاعها عليها, as soon as she would become aware of where these letters are coming from, she would rip them apart, she would rip them and tear them. فكانت تمزقها عند اطلاعها عليها أو على عنوانها, or even the envelope. Just when she see the envelope, she would just rip it. فلم يحفل أرمان بذلك ومشى إليها فقبلها. So Armand did not care too much for that, and he walked up to her and kissed her. فقالت له, so she said to him, ماذا جرى يا أرمان? What happened, O Armand? قال أرادني أبي على السفر معه. My father wanted me to travel with him. فأبيت, so I refused. وبكيت بين يديه كثيرا, and I cried in front of him a lot. فلم أنل منه منالا, and I wasn't able to get anything. It wasn't very productive. فلم أنل, I was not able to receive anything from him. وقد أمرني بالعودة إليه غدا, and he's commanded me to return back to him tomorrow. ولا أريد أن أفعل, and I don't want to do that. لأني لا أحب حظي منه في الغد خيرا منه اليوم, because I do not anticipate that I will be able to acquire from him tomorrow anything better than I was able to receive from him today. لأني لا أحب حظي منه. I do not I'm not fond of my success with him tomorrow would be any better than it was today. Okay, وقد أصبحت نفسي تحدثني بعصيانه, and my soul is actually encouraging me and telling me to disobey him. والبقاء هنا على الرغم بعصيانه والبقاء هنا على الرغم منه. In spite of what he wants, just disobey him and stay here. لأني أعلم أني قد تجاوز لأني أعلم أني قد تجاوزت السن التي يحتاج فيها الأبناء إلى إرشاد الآباء. Because I know that I have crossed the age in which sons are in need of guidance from their parents. ولأني لا أعرف أحدا بين الناس. And because I know, I do not know and I do not recognize anyone among the people يستطيع أن يرسم لي خطة سعادتي كما أرسمها لنفسي. And because I do not recognize anyone from among the people capable of crafting for me a path to my happiness similar to what I'm able to craft from my own self. ثم أنشأ يقص عليها قصته, and then he began relating to her his story with his father حتى أتمها, until he completed it. ونظر إليها, and he looked to her. فإذا هي مطرقة صامتة, so she had her head lowered and she was silent. وإذا وجهها أصفر مربد. Okay, I'm not sure what that word means. And okay, so yeah, so he looked towards her. So إذا means lo and behold. So he sees that she has her head lowered down, she's quiet, and her face is yellow and pale. كأنما قد نفض الموت عليه غباره, as if death had thrown over her face dust. فقال ما بالك يا Marguerite. So he said, what is wrong, O Marguerite? She said, أشعر بألم شديد في رأسي. She said, I feel a terrible headache. I'm experiencing a terrible pain in my head, like headache. وأريد الذهاب إلى مخدعي, and I want to go to my bed. فأخذ بيدها إليه. So he took her by the hand and brought her to her bedroom. وجرعها بضع قطرات من الدواء, and he gave to her some drops of medicine. فاستفاقت. So her pain, so she experienced a bit of relief قليلا. ثم نامت في مخدعها نوما مشردا مذعورا, and she slept within her bedroom, a disturbed, fitful sleep. تتخلله أنات طويلة وأحلام مزعجة, that was interrupted by long sighs and disturbing dreams. حتى أصبح الصباح, and this continued until morning. فقالت له, so she said to him, أرى لك يا أرمان أن تعود إلى أبيك. I feel that, O Armand, you should return to your father, كما أمرك, as he's commanded you. وأن تعاود استرحامه واستعطافه, and attempt to beg for his mercy and to get him to become compassionate. Keep trying. لعلك بالغ منه اليوم, perhaps you will reach from him today what you were incapable of reaching yesterday. ما عجزت منه بالأمس. إني لا أكون راضية عن نفسي, I can never be happy with myself. ولا هانئة بحياتي, and I can't be content with my life. إن لم يكن أبوك راضيا عنك, if your father is not happy with you. ولم تزل به, and she kept at him حتى أذعن لها, until he accepted that from her. وقام إلى ثيابه فارتداها, and he walked to his clothing and he changed his clothes. ثم مشى إليها, and then he walked to her. وضمها إلى صدره ضمة شديدة, and he hugged her with a fierce hug. كأنما يظن بها أن ينتزعها, as if he is extremely protective of her, that some unknown person will snatch her away from his arms. أن ينتزعها من ذراعيه منتزع. ثم قبلها, and then he kissed her. وقال لها, and he said, until later in the evening, يا Marguerite. فلم ترد عليه تحيته, so she did not return his greeting. حتى أبعد عنها, until he was at a distance from her. فقالت بينها وبين نفسها, at which point she said in a whisper that only she could hear, or she said between herself, بينها وبين نفسها, and her soul, أرجو أن يكون كذلك. I hope that's the case. وتهافتت, and then she collapsed on her chair, بين يديها, in front of her, باكية منتحبة, crying. So I'm going to pause here, and inshallah in the next video we'll continue, and then I'm going to string 3-4 of them together and create a long session, and the timestamps will hopefully make it easy for you. So you're not expected to watch all of it in a single sitting, right? Like even I'm taking a break. So take a break and come back to it, inshallah, and I'll see you in a moment. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so now we're moving forward with our next section of the book. So the author, he says, وَلَمْ يَزَلْ أَرْمَانُ سَائِرًا فِي سَبِيلِهِ حَتَّى وَصَلَ إِلَى باريس. And Armand kept moving forward in his path until he reached Paris. فَذَهَبَ إِلَى فُندُقِ تُورِينَ. And then he went to the hotel Turin. فَلَمْ يَجِدْ أَبَاهُ هُنَاكَ. So he did not find his father there. وَوَجَدَ رِسَالَةً تَرَكَهَا لَهُ. And he found a letter that his father had left for him قَبْلَ ذَهَابِهِ, before leaving, يَأْمُرُهُ فِيهَا, in which he was instructing him أَن يَنْتَظِرَهُ, to wait for him حَتَّى يَعُودَ, until he returns. فَلَبِثَ يَنْتَظِرُهُ. So he remained waiting for his father وَقْتًا طَوِيلًا, for a long period of time, حَتَّى عَادَ بَعْدَ مُنْتَصِفِ النَّهَارِ, until his father came back after half of the day had passed. وَقَدْ رَقَّتْ قَلِيلًا تِلْكَ الْغَمَامَةُ السَّوْدَاءُ التي كانت تلبس وجهه بالأمس فتقدم نحوه أرمان. So his father, until his father returned after half of the day had passed, or you could say after midday, and that black cloud that had earlier covered his face yesterday had now become, had thinned or was almost completely gone. Had thinned a little. Okay, qalila means a little. Had thinned a little. That black cloud that had previously covered his face yesterday. فَتَقَدَّمَ نَحْوُهَ Armand. So Armand approached him. فَحَيَّاهُ. So he, I guess the father, welcomed him. فَقَالَ لَهُ. So his father said to him. And the way I know that it's the father speaking to the son is because I'm looking forward and I'm seeing what he's saying here. And this is the speech of the father, the quoted statement. Okay, so let me reread that and let's continue. وَلَمْ يَزَلْ أَرْمَانُ سَائِرًا فِي سَبِيلِهِ حَتَّى وَصَلَ إِلَى باريس فَذَهَبَ إِلَى فُندُقِ تُورِينَ فَلَمْ يَجِدْ أَبَاهُ هُنَاكَ وَوَجَدَ رِسَالَةً تَرَكَهُ لَهَا قبل ذهابه يأمره فيها أن ينتظره حتى يعود فلبث ينتظره وقتا طويلا حتى عاد بعد منتصف النهار وقد رقت قليلا تلك الغمامة السوداء التي كانت تلبس وجهه بالأمس فتقدم نحوه أرمان فحياه فقال له. So his father said to him, لقد فكرت ليلة أمس في أمرك كثيرا. I have thought a lot yesterday night regarding your matter, يا بني, O dear son. فرأيت أني قد قسوت عليك وغلوت في أمرك غلوا كبيرا. And I have arrived at the conclusion, or I now see, that I was harsh with you and I was extreme in your matter, and I was very extreme in the way I treated you and the way I spoke to you. وَنَظَرْتُ إِلَى مَسْأَلَتِكَ بِعَيْنٍ أَقْصَرَ مِنَ التي كان يجب علي أن أنظر إليها. Okay, so this seems like a typographical error. There's a few typographical errors, and I'll draw your attention to them because I feel that they're instructive. Okay, look what he's saying. وَنَظَرْتُ إِلَى مَسْأَلَتِكَ, and I looked to your issue, بِعَيْنٍ, with an eye, أَقْصَرَ, more with an eye that was narrower than the eye with which it was mandatory upon me to look at your masala. Actually, this ilayha could be fine. It's fine. It's not a typo. Because ila mas'alatika ila ilayha. So the ha pronoun is referring to the mas'ala. وَنَظَرْتُ إِلَى مَسْأَلَتِكَ بِعَيْنٍ أَقْصَرَ مِنَ الَّتِي كَانَ يَجِبُ عَلَيَّ أَنْ أَنْظُرَ إِلَيْهَا أَنْ أَنْظُرَ بِهَا عَلَيْهَا. Okay, so basically, I looked to your issue with a view that was narrower than it should have been. And I should have looked into the issue more open-mindedly. I guess that's what he's saying, right? فَإِنَّ لِلشَّبَابِ شَأْنًا غَيْرَ شَأْنِ الْكُهُولَةِ وَالشَّيْخُوخَةِ. Because youth has a level and a status that differs from that of mid-age and old age. وَحَالًا خَاصَّةً بِهِ. And it has its own laws. It has its own circumstances that are unique to it. لَا يَخْرُجُ عَنْ حُكْمِهَا شَرِيفٌ وَلَا وَضِيعٌ. And there's no noble individual, nor any person of low status, that escapes the laws of youth. وَلَا يَخْتَلِفُ فِيهَا سُوقَةٌ عَنْ مَلِكٍ. And the commoner and the king are no different when it comes to the laws of youth. فَلَكَ أَن تَبْقَى يَا بُنَيَّ كَمَا تَشَاءُ. So you are permitted, O dear son, to remain as you wish. أن تبقى يا بني كما تشاء وأن تعاشر الفتاة التي تحبها كما تريد. And you are permitted to live with that girl that you love as you wish. كما تريد. على أن تعيدني بالعودة إلي في اليوم الذي تنقطع فيه الصلة بينك وبينها انقطاع حياة أو موت. انقطاع حياة أو موت. On the condition that you promise me to return back to me on that day in which the bond between you and between her severs, whether that be through life or whether that be through death. A severing that occurs while both of you are alive, or it's a severing that occurs because she passed away or she died. انقطاع حياة أو موت. فإني إن أمنت عليك شرها فلا آمن عليك شر غيرها من النساء. Because if I feel safe from her evil influence on you, then I don't feel the same kind of security and safety of some other woman's evil influence on you. فاستطير أرمان فرحا وسرورا. Armand was overwhelmed with joy and happiness. وأهوى على يد أبيه, and he fell on his father's hand, يقبلها, kissing it, ويبللها, and bathing it, بدموعه, with his tears. ويقول, and all the while saying, أعدك بذلك, I give you my word, I promise you that, يا أبتاه, O dear father, وعدا لا أخالفه, a promise that I will not break, ولا أخيس به, and I will not, I guess it's a similar meaning, ولا أخيس به. I'm not sure exactly what that word means, but again, like I mentioned in the earlier video, there's certain words, like maybe 2 to 5% of words that are occurring within the story that we might not be immediately familiar with. But when he brings obscure vocabulary, he generally combines it with words that you already know. So we know what it means, but we might not know its exact meaning, and that's fine for our purposes right now. وَلَكَ حُكْمُكَ مَا تَشَاءُ وَلَكَ حُكْمُكَ مَا تَشَاءُ إِنْ رَأَيْتَنِي بَعْدَ الْيَوْمِ كَاذِبًا وَحَانِثًا. And you are free to judge as you wish. You are free to judge as you wish if you see me after today as a liar or as a person who breaks his oath. كَاذِبًا وَحَانِثًا. ثُمَّ نَهَضَ يُرِيدُ الذَّهَابَ. And then he got up intending to go. فَقَالَ لَهُ. So his father said to him, أين تريد? Where are you going? قال أريد الذهاب إلى مرغريت لأبشرها بهذا النبأ وأمسح عن فؤادها ما ألم به من الروع منذ الأمس. He said, I wish to go to Marguerite in order to give her the good news and to wipe away from her heart that khawf and that terror that has descended upon it since yesterday. Ma alamma bihi. Alamma is visited her heart. That raw, or that terror, or that khawf that has visited her since yesterday. فانتفض أبوه انتفاضة خفيفة. So his father let out a brief involuntary shiver. لم يشعر بها أرمان, that Armand was not able to detect. ثم أدار وجهه, and then he turned his face in a direction other than facing Armand. ليغالب دمعة, in order to fight a tear that was formulating within his eyes. كانت تترقرق في عينيه. ثم التفت إليه, and then he turned to Armand and he said, ابق معي اليوم يا بني. So this should be ibqa, not ibqa, ibqa, because it's an amr verb, and amr verbs, when they have a weak letter towards their end, then the alif should drop. ابق معي اليوم يا بني فربما سافرت غدا. Stay with me today for the rest of the day, O dear son, for perhaps I will be traveling tomorrow. ولا أعلم بعد ذلك متى أراك, and I do not know after that when I will next see you. فبقي معه اليوم كله حتى جاء الليل. So he stayed with him the entire day until night arrived. فاستأذنه في الذهاب إلى بوجفال, and then Armand sought permission from his father to go back to Bujifal. فأذن له, so he granted him permission. فحياه, and bid farewell. وخرج, and he left. فأتبعه نظره, so he followed him with his gaze. So the father followed Armand until he disappeared in the distance. حتى غاب عينيه, he says that, until he disappeared from his from where he could see, or from his eye. Okay, what is that? He disappeared from his two eyes. فانحدرت من جفنه تلك الدمعة التي كان يحبسها من قبل. So that tear that he was holding back earlier dropped from his eyelashes. وقال, and he said, ورحمته لك أيها الولد المسكين. Oh, you break my heart, or pity on you, oh poor boy. Okay, so there's something going on in the background. Spoiler alert. Do I have to be that explicit and tell you what's going on? I think you probably figured it out. Post in the comments. Actually, don't post in the comments because you'll be spoiling it for others. Let's continue. حمل أرمان بين جنبيه آماله وآمال مارغريت وسعادتهما التي يرجوانها في مستقبل حياتهما. Armand was carrying within himself, between his two sides, his own hopes and Marguerite's hopes, and their collective happiness that the two of them were hoping to achieve in the future of their life together. وطار بها, and he flew to her. He brought those hopes and that happiness to her. ليقاسمها إياها, in order to distribute it, or in order to share it with her. حتى دنا من بوجفال, until he came near the village. فأدهشه, so it completely shocked him to see that the house was dark and calm. أن رأى البيت فأدهشه أن رأى البيت مظلما ساكنا لا يضطرب فيه شعاع. There's no glimmer of light, movement. There's no movement. ولا يتراءى فيه ظل, and there's no shadow that could be seen within the home. فمشى إلى الباب, so he walked to the door. فرآه مرتجا, so he saw it was locked. فوضع أذنه على خصاصه, so he placed his ear on the hole of the door, or on the frame of the door, whatever that means. فلم يسمع حركة, so he did not hear any movement. فأخذ يقرعه قرعا شديدا, so he began knocking on the door severely or intensely with force. ويهتف باسم مارغريت مرة واسم برودنس أخرى, and he was screaming Marguerite's name and also screaming Prudence's name, who's the maid, Marguerite's maid. فلم يجيبه أحد, so no one responded. فقال في نفسه, so he said to himself, لعلها ذهبت إلى بيتها في باريس. Maybe she's gone to her home in Paris لبعض شأنها, because of some important affair. واستصحبت خادمتها, and she's taken along with her maid. ولا بد أن تعود الآن, and absolutely she must be returning right now. فجلس على صخرة أمام باب المنزل. So he sat on a boulder in front of the door of the home, ينتظرها, waiting for her, حتى مضت هدأة من الليل فلم تعد, until a good portion of the night had passed and she had not returned. فحدثته نفسه بالعودة إلى باريس. So his soul gave him the suggestion to return to Paris in order to search for her. للبحث عنها في مظان وجودها, in all of those places where she would likely be. في مظان وجودها. So ظن يظن means to think, and the places, I guess that's what it means. مظان وجودها, the places where she'd likely be found. ثم منعه من ذلك خوفه أن يسلك في ذهابه طريقا غير الطريق التي تسلكها في عودتها. Okay, very nicely formatted sentence. Okay, hopefully you understood the meaning of it. ثم منعه من ذلك, and then what prevented him from doing that, from following that suggestion, was his fear of taking a path in going other than the path she would be taking in returning. In other words, they'd miss one another. فاستمر في مكانه, so he remained where he was, يقعد مرة, sitting at certain times, ويقوم أخرى, and sometimes standing, ويقف حينا, and standing for a period, and pacing for longer periods, ويتمشى أحيانا. So look, he combines between the مرة and أخرى and حينا and أحيانا. So there's a little يقف and there's a lot of يتمشى. That's what he's suggesting. فاستمر في مكانه يقعد مرة ويقوم أخرى. In other words, مرة أخرى. ويقف حين ويتمشى أحيانا. يتمشى means to pace. ويحدث نفسه بكل حديث يمر بخاطر القلق المرتاع إلا حديث خيانتها وغدرها. And ويحدث نفسه, and he's telling himself every scenario, he's entertaining every possible scenario that's occurring to the mind of a person who is distressed and who is fearful, other than the possibility of her treachery and the possibility of her disloyalty. ولم يزل في حيرته واضطرابه, and he was in this state of confusion and anxiousness حتى رأى جذوة الفجر تدب في فحمة الظلام, until he saw the glimmer of dawn تدب, moving slowly within the coals of darkness. So he's likening, jadwa means the spark of dawn, moving slowly within the coals of darkness. فَسَاءَ ظَنُّهُ. So his thought, he's no longer optimistic anymore, he's now pessimistic. وَانْتَشَرَتْ عَلَيْهِ وَسَابِسُهُ وَأَوْهَامُهُ. And his doubts and his suspicions are now covering over him. وقال في نفسه, and he said to himself, ما لمرغريت بد من شأن. It must be something really important. ما لمرغريت بد من شأن ولا بد لي من المصير إليها. And I have no choice but to go look for her and to go to her. والنظر في الشأن الذي شغلها, and to see what exactly the affair is that has preoccupied her. وكان القلق والسهر قد أخذا ما أخذهما من جسمه ونفسه من حيث لا يشعر. And قلق and sahar, disturbance and awakenedness, had taken their toll from his body and from his soul in a way that he didn't feel it happening. من حيث لا يشعر, from whence he could not sense. فمشى في طريقه إلى باريس يترنح ترنح الشارب الثمل. So he walked in his path to Paris, stumbling in the manner of a drunk, an intoxicated drunk person. حتى وصل إلى منزل مارغريت, until he reached Marguerite's home. وقد علا صدر النهار, and the majority of morning had, and a good portion of the day had already passed. وقد علا صدر النهار, the front portion. Sadr means front portion, in other words morning, and it was well past morning. فرأى حارس المنزل, so he saw the porter of the home. قد استيقظ من نومه, had awoken from his sleep, ووقف بفأسه على شجرة من أشجار الحديقة, and he was standing with his axe near a tree from the trees of the garden, يشذب أغصانها, trimming its branches. فسأله عن Marguerite, so he asked the porter about Marguerite's whereabouts. فقال إنها حضرت هنا بالأمس, so he said that she came here yesterday في منصرف النهار, during the latter portion of the day. ووراءها خادمتها, and behind her was her maid, تحمل حقيبة كبيرة, carrying a large bag. فصعدت إلى المنزل, so she climbed to her apartment. فلبثت فيه ساعة, and she remained there for an hour. ثم نزلت, and then she climbed down. وقد لبست ثوبا من أثواب الولائم, and she was wearing some kind of a party dress. فأعطتني كتابا, so she handed me this letter. وقالت لي إذا جاء هنا المسيو أرمان للسؤال عني, so when okay, I'm not sure what the French pronunciation is, when Monsieur Armand comes here looking for me, asking about me, فأعطيه إياه, then give this letter to him. ثم ركبت عربتها هي وخادمتها وانصرفت, and then both she and her maid boarded a carriage and they left, and she left. قال ألا تعلم أين ذهبت, don't you know where she went? قال أحسب أني سمعتها تقول للحوذي عند ركوبها إلى منزل المركيز Jean Philippe. He said that I believe I heard her saying to the driver at the time of boarding the carriage that take me to the home of Marquise Jean Philippe. فجمد أرمان في مكانه جمود الصنم. So Armand froze up where he was like a statue. واستحال لونه إلى صفرة الموت, and the color left from his face, and he became pale as if he was like a dead corpse. ومر بخاطره مرور البرق ذلك الكتاب الذي رآه في يدها بعد عودته إليها من مقابلة أبيه. And a quick thought occurred to him. ومر بخاطره, and a quick split-second thought occurred to him of that letter that he saw in Marguerite's hand when he returned to her after facing his father. فَتَرَكَهُ الْحَارِسُ مَكَانَهُ, so the porter left him where he was. وَذَهَبَ إِلَى غُرْفَتِهِ, and went to his room. وَعَادَ إِلَيْهِ بِالْكِتَابِ, and returned back with the letter. فَتَنَاوَلَهُ مِنْهُ بِيَدٍ مُرْتَجِفَةٍ. So Armand received that letter from him with a trembling hand. وَنَشَرَهُ, and opened it up. وَأَمَرَّ نَظْرَهُ عَلَيْهِ إِمْرَارًا, and skimmed over it very quickly. وَأَمَرَّ نَظْرَهُ عَلَيْهِ إِمْرَارًا فَأَحَاطَ بِمَا فِيهِ لِلنَّظْرَةِ الْأُولَى, so he was able to encompass all of what was in the letter with a single glance. فَارْتَعَدَ جِسْمُهُ ارْتِعَادًا شَدِيدًا, so his body trembled violently, shook violently. وَتَرَاجَعَ خُطْوَةً, and he staggered back a step, أو خطوتين, or two steps, إلى باب القصر, to the door of the mansion. فأسند ظهره إليه, and he leaned against it. وعاد قراءته, and he read it again. He read the letter again. فإذا, so in it, so lo and behold, it consisted of the following words. فإذا هو مشتمل على هذه الكلمات. هذا آخر ما بيني وبينك يا أرمان. This is the end of my relationship with you, O Armand. This is the last of what's between me and between you, O Armand. فلا تحدث نفسك, so don't have any thoughts of returning or trying to reconnect with me. فلا تحدث نفسك بمعاودة الاتصال بي ولا تسألني عن السبب في ذلك, and do not ask me about the cause for this decision of mine. فلا سبب عندي, because I have no cause. إلا أني هكذا أردت لنفسي, except that this is what I want for myself. Farewell. والسلام. فعلق نظره بالكتاب ساعة لا يرفع طرفه عنه, so he fixated his gaze at the letter for a moment, not lifting his eye from it. ولا يقرأ منه حرفا, and not even reading it. ولا يقرأ منه حرفا كأنما هو تمثال من تماثيل الحديقة, as if he was one of the statues of the garden. وكان الحارس قد عاد إلى شجرته, and the porter had returned back to his tree. يشذب أغصانها, trimming its branches. ويتغنى, and humming. في صعوده إليها وانحداره عنها, in his climbing up the tree and in his descending down from the tree, a portion of a love song that impressed him, the rhythm and the tune of which pleased him and impressed him. So he's humming the tune, or he's singing to himself, repeating a song, a romance song, a love song. وإن كان لا يفهم معناها, even though he didn't quite understand the meaning of what he was reciting or what he was humming and singing. I'll reread that again. ويتغنى في صعوده إليها وانحداره عنها. صعود, climbing the tree, انحدار, descending from the tree. بقطعة من الشعر الغرامي يعجبه لحنها وإن كان لا يفهم معناها فإنه لكذلك. So he was preoccupied in this humming of the song and in his own thoughts. إذ سمع صوت جسم ثقيل قد سقط على الأرض. So he, all of a sudden he heard a loud thud of a heavy body that has fallen onto the ground. فرمى بفأسه, so he flung his axe. وهرع إلى ناحية الصوت, and he rushed into the direction of where the thud came from, the sound. فرأى أرمان صريعا معفرا تحت عتبة الباب. I'm not sure what the word معفرا means. So he saw Armand lying flat on the ground at the step of the door. تحت عتبة الباب, beneath the step of the door. ففزع فزعا شديدا, so he panicked, and he was really fearful. وظنها الصرعة الكبرى, and he thought that this might be death itself. الصرعة الكبرى, the major fall. فأهوى بأذنه إلى صدره, so he threw his ear onto Armand's chest. فسمع ما بقي من دقات قلبه, so he heard some remaining heartbeats. He was able to detect heartbeats. فاطمأن قلبا, so the porter is now satisfied that he's alive. وعمد إلى جرة, and he turned his attention to a jar بين يديه that was in front of him. فأخذ ينضح بمائها, so he began sprinkling the water from the jar وجهه, on Armand's face. ويدلك براحة يده صدره, and he's massaging with the palm of his hand Armand's chest and his two temples. وصدغيه حتى استفاق بعد قليل, until he regained consciousness after a short period of time. ففتح عينيه, so Armand opens his eyes. فرأى الحارس جالسا بجانبه, and then he sees the porter sitting beside him. ورأى الكتاب, and he sees the letter that's still in his hand. لا يزال في يده. فدار بعينيه حول نفسه, so he moves his eyes around himself. He does a 360. فمرت بخاطره في الحال ذكرى مصرعه القديم. So the thought passes through him في الحال, in that situation, the reminder of his earlier fall in this very same place. في هذا المكان عينه منذ 15 شهرا, 15 months ago, on the day wherein Marguerite threw herself upon him and kissed her with her lips, and drew on his lips the first kiss of love that she ever gave him. That thought occurred to him. مرت بخاطره, that thought. ذكرى مصرعه القديم في هذا المكان عينه منذ 15 شهرا يوم ألقت مارغريت بنفسها عليه ورسمت على ثغره, and she drew on his lips the first kiss from the kisses of love. فهاجته تلك الذكرى, so this remembrance, or this thought, caused him to become emotional. وصاح, and he screamed, ما عبد اليوم ما أبعد اليوم من الأمس, how far is today from yesterday. وأنشأ يبكي بكاء الطفل الذي حيل بينه وبين ثدي أمه. And he began crying, similar to the infant child, between whom and between the breast of his mother some obstacle or some barrier is erected, who stopped from feeding, nursing Okay, so I think that's clear. وأنشأ يبكي بكاء الطفل الذي حيل بينه وبين ثدي أمه حتى بكى الحارس لبكائه, to the point that even the porter began crying due to Armand's crying. وأقبل عليه يعزيه عن مصابه, and the porter started comforting and consoling him to relieve the pain of his suffering. ويهونه عليه, and to lighten the pain of that from him, حتى هدأ قليلا, until he relaxed somewhat. فأمره أن يستدعي له عربة ففعل. Armand instructed him to call for a carriage, so he did so. فقام يتوكأ على يد الحارس, so he stood leaning against the hand of the porter حتى بلغها, until he reached the carriage. فركب, and then he boarded. وقال للسائق, and he said to the driver, إلى فندق تورين. فسارت به العربة إليه, so the carriage rode with him in that direction. حتى إذا لم يبق بينه وبينه إلا منعطف واحد مرت بجانبه, until there did not remain between him and between the hotel except for a single turn. مرت بجانبه عربة فخمة, a luxurious carriage passed by him very, very quickly. مرور البرق الخاطف, like a bolt of lightning. تحمل رجلا وامرأة, that was carrying a man and a woman. لم يتبينهما للنظرة الأولى, that he was not able to clearly identify upon first glance. ثم راجع صورتهما في خياله, and then he did a double take in his imagination of their form. فإذا, so lo and behold, it was, the two of them were Jean-Philippe ومارغريت, وكانت مركبته قد وصلت به إلى الفندق. And at this point, his carriage had brought him to the hotel. فدخل على أبيه هائما مختبلا, so he entered into the presence of his father, all shaken up and all bewildered and perplexed. فقال ما دهاك يا بني, he said, what has caused this to you, O son? What calamity has befallen you, O son? قال قد خانتني يا أبتاه, he said that she betrayed me, O father. قال ذلك ما أنذرتك به من قبل يا بني, this is what I was warning you from before, O son. ثم انقضى النهار, and then the day passed. وجاء الليل, and night arrived. فقضاه أرمان ساهرا في مقدعه, so Armand spent that entire night awake. ساهرا means awake, in his bed, في مقدعه, or in his bedroom. يراجع فهرس حياته, revisiting the pages of his life. مع Marguerite, or the table of context of his life. Fahras means table of contents of his life that he spent with Marguerite, page by page. Or you could say the story of his life. مع Marguerite صفحة صفحة, ويستعرض في نفسه جميع أطوارها وشؤونها, فلم تبقى حركة من حركاتها, ولا كلمة من كلماتها, ولا صورة من صور أعمالها. كان يراها بالأمس حسنة من حسنات الإخلاص والوفاء, إلا رآها اليوم سيئة من سيئات الخديعة والمكر, حتى وصل في مراجعته إلى الأمس واليوم الذي قبله. Pretty powerful paragraph there. It's actually just one sentence. ويستعرض في نفسه جميع أطوارها, and he is re-listening to or revisiting within himself all of the turns, all of the episodes, all of the affairs that of the story. He's remembering all of that. فَلَمْ تَبْقَ حَرَكَةٌ, so there was no movement from any of her movements, no word from any of the words that she spoke, no image or no form of any of the behaviors and deeds that she did, that previously, yesterday, he saw them to be a hasana min hasanat al-ikhlas wal-wafa. He saw them to be a good deed of sincerity and loyalty, except today he sees that same as an act of deception. سيئة, and as a sin from the sins of deception and fraud. حتى وصل في مراجعته إلى الأمس, until in his rewinding of the story he reaches yesterday and today. Yesterday and the day that was before it. Yesterday and the day before yesterday. فذكر عدم انتظارها إياه, so he remembers her not waiting for him in the balcony of the home as she would normally do on the day when he returned to her from facing his father. فذكر عدم انتظارها إياه في شرفة البيت كعادتها يوم عاد إليها من مقابلة أبيه, وشدة احتفاظها بكتاب المركيز, and her intense guarding of that letter of the Marquise in her hand, clutching it strongly, عندما دخل عليها غرفتها, at the moment when he entered her room, وظنها به ظنا شديدا, and her extreme protectiveness of it, guarding of it. ولم تكن تفعل ذلك من قبل, and she never used to behave like this ever. وإعراضها عن التبسط معه, and her unwillingness to speak with him freely after he had related to her story with his father, his story with his father. وإعراضها عن التبسط معه في الحديث بعدما قص عليها قصته مع أبيه. وزعمها, and her claim أنها مريضة خائرة, that she is extremely ill, لا تستطيع البقاء معه, incapable of remaining with him any longer. وإلحاحها عليه في صباح اليوم الثاني إلحاحا شديدا في العودة إلى مقابلة أبيه واستعطافه, and her extreme insistence on him the morning of the next day to return back to meeting his father and beg for mercy. وقولها, and her words to him, إنها لا تكون راضية عن نفسها, that she is not content, she will not be content with herself, ولا هانئة بعيشها, and she will not be pleased with her life, إن لم يكن أبوه راضيا عنه, unless his father is happy with him. فاستنتج من هذا كله, so from all of this he drew the following conclusion: أنها مذ شعرت بفراغ يده من المال, that the moment she sensed that his hand is becoming empty of wealth and his money is drying up, وأن أباه, and that his father, إما أن يحول بينه وبينها, will either become a barrier between him and between her, وإما أن يقتر عليه الرزق تقديرا, or he'll cut off the flow of sustenance from him and stop giving him money. At that point, ملته, she became weary of him, واجتوته, and she became tired. وفكرت, and she began thinking في سبيل الخلاص منه, of how she can gain freedom from him. ولم تزل تنتظر ما يأتيها به القدر, and she kept waiting for what fate would bring to her. حتى أتاها, until fate brought to her the letter of the Marquise. فكان هو طريق خلاصها, so that became the way in which she will gain her freedom from him. ولم يزل هائما ما شاء الله أن يهيم في تصوراته وأوهامه, and he remained lost as long as Allah wanted him to remain lost within his thoughts and within his suspicions. حتى غلبته عيناه, until his eyes overpowered him. فهجع قليلا, so he fell asleep for a short period of time. ثم استيقظ في الصباح, and then he awoke the next morning. فدخل على أبيه, so he entered into the presence of his father في مخدعه, within his hotel room. وقال له, and said to him, لي عندك أمنية, I have one desire from you. يا أبتاه, O father, لا أريد غيرها, and I don't want anything else. وأريد أن أبتاعها منك, and I want to purchase the fulfillment of this desire from you. بخضوعي لك, by my subservience to your command. ونزولي على حكمك, and I'll accept whatever judgment you make. أبد الدهر, until the end of time. فيما سرني أو ساءني, in whatever pleases me, brings me happiness, brings me joy, or is unpleasant to me, makes no difference. فهل لك أن تبلغنها, so is it possible that you grant me this wish? قال وما هي, he said, what is it? قال أريد أن تعطيني الساعة 15,000 فرنك, He said, I want you to give to me right now 15,000 francs. قال وما تريد منها. He said, okay, why do you need it? قال أحب أن أستأثر بهذا السر لنفسي من دون الناس جميعا. He said, I wish to keep this a secret. Keep this a secret for myself and not disclose it to anyone at all, not even you. حتى من دونك. من دون الناس جميعا حتى من دونك. فنظر إليه أبوه نظرة الملم بما دار في نفسه ولم يعاوده. So his father looked at him with the look of a person who sort of knows what's going on, sort of knows, is aware. Mulim means aware of the thought that's happening within his soul. وَلَمْ يُعَاوِدْهُ, but he didn't press. He didn't press. وَأَعْطَاهُ سُكُوكًا, and gave him some banknotes بِالْمَالِ الَّذِي أَرَادَ, equivalent to the amount of money he was wishing. فَأَخَذَهَا وَأَرْسَلَهَا إِلَى Marguerite. So he took the money and he sent the banknotes to Marguerite. وَأَرْسَلَ مَعَهَا كِتَابًا طَوِيلًا, and sent alongside it a long letter. ختمه بهذه الكلمة, that he ended with the following words: أما, alas, وقد عرفت أنني كنت أعيش مع امرأة عاهرة ساقطة. I have now realized that I was living with a harlot, a fallen woman that has no loyalty and has no dignity. لا عهد لها ولا ذمام. فها هي ذي. So here you are, the wages and the payment for those previous nights that we spent together. مرسلة إليك, sent to you and delivered to you. ثم خرج ليعد نفسه للسفر, and then he left in order to prepare for travel. فقضى اليوم كله خارج الفندق. So he spent the majority of that day, or all of that day, outside the hotel. ثم عاد إليه, and then he returned back دبر النهار, towards the end of the day. فوجد فيه كتابا. So at the hotel he found a letter with his name on it. ففض ختامه, so he broke the seal. فإذا الأوراق التي أرسلها إلى Marguerite. So those papers or those checks that he had sent to Marguerite were returned back to him as they were. وَلَيْسَ مَعَهَا كَلِمَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ, and there was not a single word accompanying the returned payment. فَحَاوَلَ أَنْ يُعِيدَهَا إِلَيْهَا مَرَّةً أُخْرى. So he thought to resend back to her again one more time. فَمَنَعَهُ أَبُوهُ. So his father prevented him from that. وَقَالَ لَهُ, and said to him, قَدْ وَعَدْتَنِي, you promised me, you gave me your word, أَلَّا تُخَالِفَنِي, that you will not oppose me, في أمر, in any matter. فَلَا بُدَّ لَكَ مِنَ الْإِذْعَانِ. So you absolutely must stand down, or مِنَ الْإِذْعَانِ, accept my judgment. فأذعن, so he accepted the judgment. ثم سافرا معا تلك الليلة إلى نيس. And then the two of them traveled the next night, that night, to Nice. وكذلك قضى الله أن يفترق ذلك الصديقان الوفيان. And in this way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that these two loyal friends part. والعاشقان المخلصان, and these sincere lovers become separated. فعاد الفتى إلى أحضان أبيه. So the young man returned to the arms of his father. وعادت الفتاة, and the young girl returned to her earlier life. إلى حياتها الأولى التي كانت تأباها, that she hated with every fiber of her being. كانت تأباها الإباء كله وتخافها الخوف الشديد, and that she feared so unimaginably. وفي نفس كل منهما من الوجد بصاحبه والحسرة عليه ما لا تليه الأيام ولا تنتقص منه السنون والأعوام. Okay, now this sentence is good, and there's a typo here. There's a typographical error. وفي نفس كل منهما من الوجد بصاحبه والحسرة عليه ما لا تنسيه الأيام. It should be تنسيه الأيام, or it should be something like تمحوه الأيام. تمحوه. Maha yamhu means to wipe away, to erase. And tunsihi means to cause something to forget. And within the soul of every one of these two lovers, there was the kind of pain for the other, and there was a hasra and a grief over the other that the days could never erase. and that the years and the seasons could never diminish. وَلَا تَنْتَقِصُ مِنْهُ السِّنُونُ وَالْأَعْوَامُ. So go ahead, do a i'rab of the sentence. Tell me from where to where is the khabar, where to where is the mubtada, and how would you analyze this, and how would you parse this. I'll read it again one more time. وَفِي نَفْسِ كُلِّ مِنْهُمَا مِنَ الْوَجْدِ بِصَاحِبِهِ وَالْحَسْرَةِ عَلَيْهِ مَا لَا تَمْحُوهُ الْأَيَّامُ وَلَا تَنْتَقِصُ مِنْهُ السُّنُونُ وَالْأَعْوَامُ. And within the soul of each one of these two lovers, there was a level of pain for the other, and there was a level of grief over the other that the days could never erase, and the days could never cause to forget. وَلَا تَنْتَقِصُ مِنْهُ السِّنُونُ وَالْعَوَامُ. And the years and the seasons, and the synonyms. Sinun means years, and awam also means years. So I'm changing one of them to seasons. Either the first one or the second one. That the seasons and the years could never diminish. And that concludes what we'll do for this session. And we'll see you in the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so we're moving on to the third session now. The author, he says, Al-ashqiya'u fi dunya kathir. That miserable people within the world are many, misfortunate people. وَعَذَبُهُمْ شَقَاءً. And the most misfortunate person, ذَلِكَ الْحَزِينُ صَابِرُ, is that grief-stricken, patient person, الَّذِي قَضَتْ عَلَيْهِ ضَرُورَةٌ مِّن ضَرُورِيَاتِ الْحَيَاةِ أَن يَهْبِطَ بِآلَامِهِ وَأَحْزَانِهِ إِلَى قَرَارَةِ نَفْسِهِ فَيُودِعُهَا هُنَاكَ ثم يغلق دونها بابا من الصمت والكتمان ثم يصعد إلى الناس باش الوجه باسم الثغر متطلقا متهللا كأنه لا يحمل بين جنبيه هما ولا كمدا. That misfortunate people in the world are many, and the most misfortunate and miserable person is that grief-stricken, patient person that on whom some cruel necessity of life has decreed for them to bury their pains and their griefs deep within their soul. Take them down. Yahbit means take them down. In other words, bury. فَيُودِعُهَا هُنَاكَ, and store them there, deep within the soul, and then lock them behind a door of silence and concealment, and close in front of them a door. ثم يغلق دونها بابا من الصمت والكتمان ثم يصعد إلى الناس, and then ascend to the people باش الوجه, smiling with a happy face. باسم الثغر, باش الوجه means with the happy face. باسم الثغر, smiling lips. متطلقا, radiant eyes. ومتهللا, full of joy and happiness. Okay, they're all like near synonyms. كأنه لا يحمل بين جنبيه, as if they are not carrying between their two sides any anxiety or any burden at all. هما ولا كمدا. ذلك كان شأن Marguerite. That was the situation of Marguerite بعد عودتها إلى حياتها الأولى, after her returning back to her previous world, her previous life. فقد أصبحت تعيش مع الناس, because she ended up living among the people, living along with the people, بصورة غير الصورة التي تعيش بها مع نفسها, with a form that differed greatly from the form with which she lived with herself. أما حياتها مع الناس, as for her life along with the people, فحياة ضاحكة لاعبة مرحة وثابة. It was a laughing, playful, joyful, carefree life. مرحة وثابة تضيء المجامع والمحافل, illuminating the salons and the places of assembly. وتملأ الأنظار والأسماع, and filling people's eyes and their ears with what they want to see and what they want to hear. فإذا ضمها مخدعها, so when her bedroom would enclose her, وخلا لها وجه الليل, and the face of the night would become exclusive for her. مرت أمام عينيها صورة تلك الساعات السعيدة. The image of those wonderful, happy moments that she spent alongside Armand would flash by her. مرت أمام عينها, flash in front of her eyes. ثم ذكرت أنها قد أفلتت من يدها, and then she would remember that that happy life escaped from her hand, similar to how a bird sometimes escapes from the hand of its captor. ثم ذكرت أنها قد أفلتت من يدها إفلات الطائر من يد صائده وصارت بعيدة عنها, and that happiness is so far from her, similar to how the sun is far from the hand of the person trying to grab it. وصارت بعيدة عنها بعد الشمس عن يد متناولها وأنها قد أصبحت تعيش بين أقوام لا تعرفهم, and she would remember that she's now living among a people that she does not recognize. أقوام لا تعرفهم ولا تجد في نفسها لذة الأنس بهم, and she finds within herself no pleasure of socializing with them. ثم لا تجد لها بدا من مماذقتهم والتحبب إليهم والتجمل لهم بما يريدون ويشتهون. However, she finds no escape from having to laugh with them, have fun with them, flatter them, and to beautify herself for them with what they wish and with what they desire. فَتُقَبِّلُ الْأَفْوَاهَ الَّتِي لَا تَشْتَهِيهَا, so she ends up kissing mouths that she does not crave. لا تشتهيها. وتعتنق القامات التي لا تطيق رؤيتها, and she hugs bodies that she can't even bear looking at. وتشرب مع كل شارب, and she drinks with every drinker. والشراب يحرق أحشاءها, whereas the alcohol burns up her insides. وترقص مع كل راقص, and she dances with every dancer. والرقص يمزق أوصالها, and the dance is ripping apart her joints. وتضحك ضحكات السرور من قلب باكٍ, and she's laughing with happy laughter from a heart that's actually crying. من قلب باكٍ. وتنشد أناشيد الهناء, and she's singing the songs of happiness from a burned up heart. من فؤاد محترق. فكأنها في يد الناس كالعود في يد المغني. So this والعود is a mistake, it should be كالعود. فكأنها, so it's as if in the hands of people she's like the lute instrument in the hands of the musician. يقطع أوتاره ضربا, who's cutting through its strings, or okay, like what's the term in English for that? That's hitting the strings ليطرب, in order to derive pleasure from the tunes that the instrument produces. لنغماته أو الزهرة, or like the rose flower في يد المختطف, in the hands of the person who plucks the flowers. يعصر أوراقها, who's squeezing its petals عصرا, intensely, in order to benefit and in order to derive pleasure from its scents. بشذاها. فتهيجها ذكرى ذلك الماضي السعيد وهذا الحاضر الشقي. So remembering that happy past and this miserable present would make her very emotional. فتطلق السبيل لزفراتها وعبراتها, so she would let loose the past for her wails and screams and her tears. يسعد منها ما يسعد, whatever would rise from among them would rise. وينحدر ما ينحدر, and whatever would flow from among them would flow. In other words, the crying and the wailing would rise and the tears would flow. But I mean, the author, look how beautifully he expresses it. I'll reread that again. فتهيجها ذكرى ذلك الماضي السعيد وهذا الحاضر الشقي فتطلق السبيل لزفراتها وعبراتها يسعد منها ما يسعد وينحدر منها ما ينحدر حتى تشتفي نفسها, until her soul would receive a level of closure or some relief. فتقوم إلى خزانة ملابسها, so she would stand up and go to her closet. فتستخرج منها صورة, so she would bring out a portrait. تضعها بين سحرها ونحرها, that she would place between her chest and her neck. ثم تأوي إلى مضجعها, and then she would take relief towards her bed. فتجد برد الراحة, and then she would feel a coolness of relief within her chest, because that was the portrait of Armand. في صدرها لأنها صورة أرمان. ولم تزل تكابد من الشقاء في تلك الحياة الساقطة وآلامها ما لا طاقة لمثلها باحتمال مثله. ما لا طاقة لمثلها باحتمال مثله. And she kept experiencing the kind of misery and wretchedness within this fallen life and all of its pains, the like of which is not bearable by someone like her, the like of which is impossible to bear and is intolerable for someone like her. ولم تزل تكابد من الشقاء في تلك الحياة الساقطة وآلامها ما لا. So this is the مفعول به for تكابد. So she's tolerating and bearing that, the like of which is no person similar to her would be able to bear. لا طاقة لمثلها باحتمال مثله. So this pronoun مثله is referring to the ma, the موصول ما. حتى استيقظ في صدرها داؤها القديم, to the point that within her chest her previous illness resurfaced. بعدما نام awoke. بعدما نام عنها حين من الدهر, after having slept heedless of her for a long period of time. حين من الدهر. فهزل جسمها, so her body withered away. وشحب لونها, and her color faded. وغاض ماء ابتساماتها, and the water from her smiles receded. وانطفأ شعاع نظراتها, and the rays of her sight extinguished. وشغلها شأن نفسها عن شأن الملكيز, and her own personal affair preoccupied her from the affair of the Milkis. فلم يلبث أن ملها وفارقها. So a long period of time did not pass that this Jean-Philippe grew tired of her and separated from her. واستبدل بها أخرى غيرها, and replaced her with another other than her. ثم اختلف عليها من بعده الأخلاء الرفقاء, and then after the Milkis, many other previous friends and lovers took turns one after the other. فكان شأنهم معها شأنه, so their situation with her became similar to his situation. لا يلبث أحدهم أن يعرفها, it was only a matter of time that one of them recognized her, that he would leave her. حتى يهجرها. فكسدت سلعتها في سوق الجمال, so her merchandise lost all of its value in the marketplace of beauty. وطمع فيها من لم يكن يطمع قبل اليوم في لثم مواطئ أقدامها. And regarding her, such people became hopeful that would not before today be hopeful of kissing the land under her feet, kissing the earth under her feet. They didn't have the desire they didn't have the courage to do that. They would then start thinking about entering into a relationship with her. وخلت منها المجامع والمحافل, and the salons and the gathering places became empty of her, and then soon thereafter became empty of her mention and conversation about her. ثم خلت من ذكرها وحديثها. وأعوزها المال إعوازا شديدا, and wealth put her in severe need. In other words, she lost all of her money and she became so poor. فمدت يدها إلى ما كان باقيا عندها من جواهرها ولآلئها. So she reached out to whatever jewelry and whatever pearls, etc. she had in her possession. فباعته, she sold all of it. فلم يفي بدينها, and that did not suffice and take care of her debts, was not enough to satisfy her debts. فطلبت المعونة من كثير من أصدقائها الماضين. So she sought assistance from many of her previous friends. فأرسل إليها قليل منهم القليل منها. So few from among them sent to her a very little amount of it, a very little amount of assistance. فلم يغني عنها شيئا. So this did not avail her at all. واختلفت إليها جرائد الحساب. And the collection notices started arriving one after the other. يطلب أصحابها سداد ما فيها. The people sending those notices were seeking that the bills be squared, that the bills contained within those collection notices be squared. فدافعتهم عنها حينا. So she kept them away for some period of time, kept those people away from some period of time. ثم عجزت. And then she was no longer able to do that. فحجزوا. So they took control على جميع مقتنياتها وذخائرها, of all of her possessions and all of her hidden treasures. وأثاث بيتها, and the furniture of her home. ورياشه, and her decor. وَلَأُمُوا, and they behaved rudely in requesting the debts. And in requesting of the debts, they behaved so rudely that it multiplied her grief and her illness. وَلَأُمُوا في مقاضاتها لؤما ضاعف حزنها ومرضها وقضى على بقية ما كانت تضمره في نفسها من الأمل في الحياة والسعادة فيها, and just completely destroyed and annihilated whatever hopes she was hiding and concealing within her soul of ever living a life, a real life, and being happy with life. فَنَسِيَتِ الْعَالَمَ, so she forgot the entire world, خَيْرَهُ وَشَرَّهُ, the good of it and the bad of it, وَالْحَيَاةَ سَعَادَتَهَا وَشَقَاءَهَا, and she forgot all life, the happy life as well as the miserable life. وَأَصْبَحَتْ لَا تُفَكِّرُ إِلَّا فِي أَمْرٍ وَاحِدٍ, and she began not thinking about anything except one issue, إِلَّا فِي أَمْرٍ وَاحِدٍ تَقُومُ وَتَقْعُدُ بِهِ لَيْلَهَا وَنَهَارَهَا, with which she would stand and sit throughout her night and throughout her day. وَهُوَ أَن تَرَى أَرْمَانَ سَاعَةً وَاحِدَةً قَبْلَ مَوْتِهَا, and that was the desire to see Armand for a single hour before she dies, and then she can go off to her Lord. ثُمَّ تَذْهَبُ إِلَى رَبِّهَا. وَلَمْ تَكُنْ قد كتبت إليه قبل اليوم كلمة واحدة مذ فارقها, and she had not written to him before today a single word since the day he left her. مذ فارقها, since the day he separated from her. ولا كتب إليها, neither did he write to her. فنهضت تتحامل على نفسها, so she got up and sluggishly went until she reached her desk, carried herself تتحامل على نفسها, against her will, carried herself حتى وصلت إلى منضدتها, until she reached her desk. فكتبت إليه هذا الكتاب, and she wrote to him the following letter. تعال إلي يا أرمان, come to me, O Armand. راضيا كنت أو غاضبا, whether you're happy and content or whether you're angry. فإنني مريضة, because I am a sick woman. مشرفة, about on the verge of dying. وأحب أن أراك قبل موتي, and I desire to see you before I die. لأفضي لك بسر الذنب الذي أذنبته إليك فيما مضى, in order that I can communicate to you the secret of the sin that I committed against you in the past. وَالَّذِي لَا تَزَالُ وَاجِدًا عَلَيَّ بِسَبَبِهِ, and that same sin that you are still upset against me on account of it, حتى اليوم, until today. فَلَعَلَّكَ تَعْفُو عَنِّي فِي سَاعَتِي الْأَخِيرَةِ, for perhaps you may forgive me in this final hour of mine. فَيَكُونُ عَفْوُكَ وَرِضَاكَ, so your forgiveness and your contentment would be the sole provision that I take from this world to my grave. هو كل فيكون عفوك ورضاك هو كل, this is كل, is خبر بيكون, هو كل ما أتزوده من هذه الحياة لقبري. واذكر يا أرمان, and remember, O Armand, أن أول عاطفة جمعت بيني وبينك, that the first emotion that gathered between me and between you, وألفت بين قلبي وقلبك, and connected between my heart and your heart, كانت عاطفة الرحمة والشفقة, was the emotion and the feeling was the feeling of mercy and compassion. فها هي الفتاة. So here, that same ill, poor girl, هي الفتاة المريضة المسكينة التي رحمتها بالأمس, that you had mercy on yesterday and you showed compassion towards, قبل أن تحبها, before you ever loved her, تدعوك اليوم, that same girl is calling you today to have mercy on her and be compassionate for her. وإن تكن قد سلوتها, even if you may have gotten over her. Well, I guess that's what that means. أما كتابك الذي كتبته إلي, as for that letter that you wrote to me, قبل سفرك, before traveling, فقد اغتفرت لك كل ما فيه, I have forgiven for you every comment that you made within that letter. حتى قولك, even your statement that إنني كنت كاذبة, that I was deceptive and I was a liar in my claim of loving you. طامعة في مالك, merely desirous of your wealth. لأني أعلم, because I know, أن المرأة التي تكذب الناس, that the woman who lies to people regarding her love, طول حياتها, all of her life, لا يمكن أن تجد من يصدقها, it's not possible for her to find someone who would believe her when she's eventually truthful about that. وعدل من الله كل ما صنع, and this is justice from God. So everything that God does is just. In other words, I got what I deserved. ثم لبثت تنتظر حضوره, and then she remained waiting for him to come and arrive, أياما طوالا, for many long days. فلم يأتي, he did not come. فأحزنها ذلك حزنا شديدا, so this caused her great grief. وساء ظنها به, and her thoughts regarding Armand started wavering, and she started having some bad thoughts about him. ووقع في نفسها أنه قد سلاها, and it occurred within her soul that he has gotten over her. وأطرحها, and he's completely discarded her. وأصبح لا يعبأ بها, and he's now to the point that he doesn't care about her. ولا يبالي بحياتها أو موتها, and he isn't bothered whether she's alive or whether she dies. وسعادتها أو شقائها, and he has no concern for her happiness or for her misery. وكانت مخطئة فيما ظنت, and she was mistaken in what she was thinking. فإن أرمان لم يطلع على الكتاب الذي أرسلته إليه, because Armand wasn't even aware of the letter that she sent to him. مذ فارقها, since he separated from her. في العام الماضي, in the earlier year. وسافر إلى نيس, and he traveled to Nice. ولم يستطيع البقاء فيها. مذ فارقها في العام الماضي وسافر. فإن أرمان لم يطلع على الكتاب الذي أرسلته إليه مذ فارقها في العام الماضي وسافر إلى نيس. ولم يستطيع البقاء فيها إلا أيام قلائل ثم ملكه الضجر. So basically, there's probably some harf here, the fa or something missing. But at any rate, what he's saying, the author, is that Armand was not aware of her having sent any letter to him since he left her in the previous year. Okay, so this should be a new sentence. Since he left her in the previous year and traveled back to Nice. وَلَمْ يَسْتَطِعِ الْبَقَاءَ, and he was not able to remain there except for some short days. ثُمَّ مَلَكَهُ الضَّجْرُ, and then boredom overtook him. وَأَحَاطَتْ بِهِ الْوَحْشَةُ, and loneliness encompassed him. وَضَاقَتْ فِي وَجْهِهِ مَذَاهِبُ السَّلْوَى, and all of the paths to closure, all of the paths to contentment, relief, were shut in front of his face. ضاقت. فاستأذن من أبيه, so he sought permission from his father, أن يسافر إلى بعض بلاد المشرق, to travel to some of the lands towards the east, ترويحا عن نفسه, in order to bring some relief to his soul, وتفريجا من كربته, and to remove some of his calamity and some of his pain. فأذن له, so his father granted him permission. فسافر إلى الإسكندرية, So he traveled to Alexandria. فأقام بها بضعة أشهر. So he was a resident there for some months. كاتب أباه. He kept correspondence with his father while there, a little, قليلا. ثم تركها, and then he abandoned Iskandariya. وأخذ يتنقل في أنحاء البلاد, and he began traveling non-stop in the corners of the cities. ثم لم ينزل ببلدة, not settling in any one city, حتى يطير به الضجر إلى غيره, until boredom would take him and throw him to some other land. فانقطعت رسائله عن أبيه. So all of his correspondence with his father came to a halt. فأصبح لا يعلم مكان وجوده, and his father lost track of where he is, did not know his place where he was. فلما أرسلت مارغريت إليه كتابها في نيس. So when Marguerite sent to him her letter in Nice, قرأه أبوه, his father read it, وحفظه عنده, and protected it and kept it for him. ولم يستطع أن يرسله إليه, but was not able to send it to his son. ومارغريت لا تعلم بشيء من ذلك. And on the other hand, meanwhile, Marguerite was not informed of any of that. فحزنت لخيبة أملها حزنا شديدا. So because of the failure of her hope, she was grief-stricken. وَدَبَّ الْيَأْسُ فِي قَلْبِهَا دَبِيبَ الْمَوْتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ, and despair began creeping into her heart, similar to how death creeps into life. دَبِيبَ الْمَوْتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ. ووقع في نفسها أنها ستخرج من الدنيا فارغة اليد من كل شيء. And it occurred to her within her soul that she will soon leave from this world empty-handed, where she has nothing in her hands at all, even that one desire that remained within her hand from among all of her wasted desires. من بين جميع أعمالها الضائعة فتنكر شأنها. So her situation deteriorated further. واستحالت حالها, and her circumstance changed. ولجأت, and she was forced to adopt long periods of silence. ولجأت إلى صمت طويل لا تقول فيه خيرا ولا شرا, in which she would speak no good nor any evil. وأصبحت تنظر إلى نفسها, and she began looking to herself. وإلى ما يحيط بها من الأشياء, and to all of the things that surround her. كأنها تنظر إلى شيء تنكره ولا تعرفه, as if she's looking at something that she does not know and she does not recognize. She finds unfamiliar and she does not recognize. فربما دخل عليها طبيبها. So at certain times her doctor would visit her. وهي في أشد حالات ألمها, while she was in the worst of her pain. فلا تشكو له ألما. So she would not complain of the pain, and she would not even inform the doctor of the pain she's in. أو سمعت ضوضاء الدائنين وصخبهم في فناء المنزل. Or she would hear the commotion of the creditors and their loud yelling in the foyer of the home. فلا تسأل ماذا يريد. So she wouldn't even ask, what do they want? ماذا يريدون. وكانت إذا شعرت بقليل من الراحة, and when she would feel a sense of relief and سكون, ركبت عربتها, she would board her carriage إلى بوجيفال, to Bougival. فزارت البيت الذي قضت فيه أيام سعادتها الذاهبة. So she would visit that same home in which she spent all of her past days of happiness that are gone, that are long gone. ذاهبة. وكان لا يزال باقيا, and that house was exactly the same as it was. على الصورة التي تركتها عليها, that she left it. يوم فارقته, on the day when she separated from it. ومرت بغرفه وقاعاته, and she would pass by the rooms of the house and the open spaces. وجلست, and she would sit في كل مكان كانت تجلس فيه مع أرمان, in every place in which she used to sit with Armand. وأشرفت من كل نافذة كان يشرف منها معها, and she would look through every window from which he would look through along with her. وقبلت جميع آثاره وبقاياه, and she would kiss all of the items that were touched by him, and all of his remnants and all of the things he left behind. ولثمت الكأس التي كان يشرب منها, and she would kiss the drinking glass from which he used to drink. والزهرة التي كان يحبها, and that flower that he used to love, والقلم الذي كان يكتب به, and that pen with which he used to write, والكتاب الذي كان يقرأ فيه, and that book that he used to read. Okay, now we don't have to translate this fihi here, because reading, in which he used to read, or which he used to read. فإذا نال منها التعب, and then when she would, when fatigue would overtake her, she become tired, جلست على بعض المقاعد, so she would sit on some of those benches, on some of the benches, لتأخذ لنفسها راحتها, in order to regain some relief. لتأخذ لنفسها راحتها, in order to relax, basically. فربما طار بها خيالها إلى ذلك العهد القديم. So at certain times, her imagination would take her to that long gone time, that era, that long gone era. فتمثل لها أن أرمان, so it would appear to her that Armand is sitting in front of her, near her feet. يسرد عليها حادثة من حوادث طفولته في نيس, relating to her some event, some story from his childhood in Nice. أو يبثها, or he is disclosing to her the level of love and passion he has for her within his soul, ما يضمر, that he's concealing within his soul, ما يضمره لها في نفسه من الوجد والغرام. فتبتسم لحديثه, so she would smile at his conversation, at what he's saying, ابتسام السعيد الهاني, like a happy, content person. وتستشعر في نفسها لذة, and she would sense within her soul a kind of pleasure, the like of which is only sensed by the God-fearing within the gardens of paradise. Okay, so this is Manfalūṭī saying, فَتَبْتَسِمُ لِحَدِيثِهِ ابتسام السعيد الهانئ وتستشعر في نفسها لذة لا يشعر بمثلها إلا المتقون في جنات النعيم. ثم تفتح عينيها, and then she would open her two eyes, فلا ترى أمامها غير الوحشة والسكون. So she would not see in front of her other than loneliness and stillness and being by herself, والانفراد and solitude. فتبكي ما شاء الله أن تفعل, so she would cry as long as Allah willed for her to do so. ثم تعود إلى بيتها في باريس, and then she would return back to her home in Paris. فتجلس على كرسيها, and she would sit on her chair, بجانب منضدتها, beside her desk, وتناجي أرمان, and she would have a conversation with Armand في مذكراتها, within her memoirs, بجميع ما تحدثها به نفسه, with all of what her soul is telling her to talk about. كأنه حاضر بين يديها, as if he's there, present in front of her, seeing her and listening to her. يراها ويسمعها. بجميع ما تحدثها به نفسه كأنه حاضر. بجميع ما تحدثها به نفسه. Okay, so I think I mistranslated that. فتجلس على كرسيها, so she would sit on her chair, beside her desk, conversing and confining with Armand within her memoirs, with all of the things that his soul is telling her, as if they're having a conversation, like a real conversation, and as if he's present in front of her, seeing her and listening to her. So I think I'll end this session here, and now is the most emotional, intimate part of the story, and we're about like 60% of the way there. So I'll stop it here, inshallah, and I'll see you in the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so now we're moving forward with Marguerite's memoirs. And these are really intimate, and it's in the first person, like she's speaking herself. So the author, he writes in her voice. مذكرات Marguerite, dated 15 December 1850. Armand, لم تكتب إلي ولم تأتني. You did not write to me, and neither did you come. كأنما ظننت أني أريد أن أستعيد معك عهد الماضي. As if you're thinking that I want to bring back the past. I want to bring back the past. وأين أنا من ذلك العهد? And how far am I from the past? And where am I in relation to the past? فلو رأيتني, if you were to see me, لرأيت امرأة ذاهبة مدبرة, you would see a woman who's withering away and who's on the verge of collapsing, مدبرة, or moving in the opposite direction. لا تصلح لشأن من شؤون الحياة, unfit for any of the world's tasks. لا تصلح لشأن من شؤون الحياة ولم يبق فيها من صورتها الماضية, and from her previous form nothing remains إلا كما بقي من الزهرة الساقطة عن غصنها بعدما عصفت الريح بأوراقها. All that remains from her previous form is similar to what would remain from a fallen flower from its stem after the wind has blown off all of its petals. ما عصفت الريح بأوراقها. وكل ما كنت أريده منك, and the sum total of what I want from you, أن أراك, is to merely just see you. بجانب فراشي, at the side of my bed, في ساعتي الأخيرة, in this last moment of my life, لأعتذر لك, so that I can explain to you عن ذنبي الذي أذنبته إليك, the wrong that I did to you. I can explain to you the wrong and why I did that. ثم أنظر إليك, ثم أنظر, and once I'm done explaining that, ثم أنظر إليك نظرة وداع, I can look to you with one final look of farewell. أغمض عليها جفني, upon which I can close my eyelids. وأذهب بها إلى قبري, and then I can take that with me to my grave. ما أنا بخائنة يا أرمان. Oh Armand, I did not betray you. ولا خادعة, and neither was I deceptive. فإن الرسالة التي رأيتها في يدي, because that letter that you saw in my hand, يوم عدت إلي من مقابلة أبيك, the day when you returned to me after having met your father, ليست رسالة المركيز, that was not the letter from the Marquise, كما ظننت, as you thought it was, بل رسالة أبيك نفسه, rather it was your father's own letter, وصلت منه قبل وصولك إلي, that arrived from him before your arrival to me in Bougiful بساعة واحدة, an hour earlier. وهذا نصها الذي لا يزال عالقا بذهني حتى الساعة, and this is its text that still remains stuck to my mind حتى الساعة, until this very moment. سيدتي مدام, أريد أن أقابلك غدا في منزلك في الساعة 10 صباحا في شأن خاص بي وبك. I want to meet you tomorrow at your home 10 a.m. in the morning regarding a matter that concerns both me and you. Regarding a matter that concerns both me and you. أريد أن أقابلك غدا في منزلك في الساعة 10 صباحا في شأن خاص بي وبك. وأريد ألا يكون أرمان حاضرا تلك المقابلة, and I desire, or I wish, I want Armand to not be present during that meeting, ولا عالما بها, and not even aware of it, ولا بأني أرسلت هذه الرسالة إليك, and neither of the fact that I sent this letter to you, ولي من حسن الرأي فيك, and I have a good opinion of you, that ما يطمعني في أن يكون ما سألتك إياه سرا بيني وبينك حتى نلتقي والسلام. Okay, this is an interesting sentence. He says, ولي من حسن الرأي فيك ما يطمعني, and I have a strong enough opinion of you that gives me hope in that what I'm asking of you remains a secret between me and between you until we meet. Farewell. Okay, Dufal, and then he signs it. فلما قرأتها, Marguerite says that when I read it, علمت ماذا يريد من تلك المقابلة. I knew what exactly he wanted from that meeting. وشعرت بما وراءها, and I understood what was behind the meeting. بل علمت بما دار بينك وبينه من الحديث. In fact, I already knew the conversation that occurred between you and between him. وأنك امتنعت عليه, and that you refused to accept his wishes. حتى يئس منك, to the point that he lost hope from you. فحاول أن يدخل عليك من بابي, so he wished to get to you through me, using me as a door in order to get to you. فحدثتني نفسي, so my soul suggested to me that I refuse meeting him. أن أرفض مقابلته وأن أكاشفك, and I tell you everything. وأن أكاشفك, disclose to you بكل شيء. ثم استحييت من نفسي, and then I felt ashamed from myself. وأكبرت أن يعتمد علي رجل شريف كأبيك, and وأكبرت, and I felt it unbearable. I felt it unbearable that a man, a noble man similar to your father, rely on me and have trust in me in concealing a simple secret like this. في كتمان سر بسيط كهذا السر فلا يجدني عند ظنه, and then he not find me to be according to his estimation. وطمعت في أن أنال منه عند المقابلة ما يطمع أن يناله مني, and I hoped to get from him during the meeting what he was hoping to get from me. In other words, I felt that I could convince him to do what we want instead of he convincing me. فكتمتك أمر الرسالة, so I concealed from you the matter of the letter. وكتمتك ما في نفسي منها, and I also concealed from you what was in my heart regarding that letter. ولم أكن كاذبة في شكاتي وألمي, and I wasn't lying when speaking about my pain and my complaint and my pain. حينما قلت لك, when I said to you في تلك الليلة, that night, إنني لا أستطيع البقاء بجانبك, I am not capable of remaining by your side. وسألتك أن تقودني, and I requested of you to take me to my bedroom. أن تقودني, to lead me to my bedroom. إلى مخدعي. فقد قضيت في فراشي, so I spent in my bed. بعدما فارقتك, after having left you, a night the like of which I had not spent in all of the nights of anxiety and grief that have passed over me in my life. فقد قضيت في فراشي بعدما فارقتك ليلة لم أقضي مثلها في جميع ما مر بي من ليالي الهموم والأحزان حتى أصبح الصباح, until morning arrived. فألححت عليك أن تذهب لمقابلة أبيك, so I insisted and pressed you to go to meet your father. وأنا أعلم, and I knew أنك إن ذهبت إليه لا تراه, I knew that were you to go, you would not find him there because he's on his way here. ولا تنتفع بمقابلته, and you would not be able to gain any benefit from meeting him if you were able to see him إن رأيته. ولكني خفت أن يزورني فيراك عندي فأصغر في عينيه. ولكني خفت أن يزورني, however, I was afraid that he would visit me and see you in my presence, and thus I would shrink in his eyes. I would shrink in his eyes. I lose value in his eyes. فأصغر في عينيه. ولا أشد علي من ذلك, and there's nothing more difficult than that for me. وما هي إلا لحظات قليلة, and it was only a few more moments. حتى وصل إلى بوجفال في الموعد الذي ضربه في كتابه, that he reached Bougival in that precise moment that he stated within his letter. فاستأذن علي, so he sought permission. فأذنت له, it should be له. فأذنت له, so I gave him permission. فدخل, so he entered. فرأيت في عينيه جمرة من الغضب, so I saw in his eyes a spark of anger, burning fire. تلتهب التهابا, which was burning intensely in his eyes. Jamratan means like a spark or a coal, a burning coal of anger in his eyes. فلم أحفل بها, I did not care too much for it. ودعوته للجلوس فلم يفعل, and I requested of him to sit down, and he did not oblige. وَلَمْ يُحَيِّنِي بِيَدِهِ وَلَا بِلِسَانِهِ, and he did not greet me neither with his hand nor with his tongue. وَكَانَ أَوَّلَ مَا اسْتَقْبَلَنِي بِهِ قَوْلُهُ, and the first thing that he greeted me with was his following statement: ماذا تريدين أن تصنعي بولدي أيتها السيدة? What do you want to do with my son, madame? وظل ناظرا إلي نظرا جامدا ساكنا, and he kept looking at me with a frozen, still gaze, لا يطرف, not unblinking, ولا يختلج, and unwavering. Okay, فعجبت لمدخله الغريب, so I was astonished and taken aback by his strange entry, ونظراته المترفعة, and his gazes, and the way he was looking at me, looking down upon me, and his gazes that were looking down upon me, ولهجته الجافة الخشنة, and his dry rude tone, ولهجته الجافة الخشنة. وامتعضت في نفسي امتعاضا شديدا, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable within my soul. حتى كدت أقول له, to the point that I was almost ready to say to him, ولا أكتم كذلك, and I won't conceal that from you, تذكر يا سيدي, remember, O sir, أنك في منزلي, that you are in my home, وأنني لم أدعك إلى زيارتي, and that it wasn't I that invited you to visit me, rather it was you that invited yourself. You invited yourself through yourself. بل أنت الذي دعوت نفسك بنفسك. ثم ذكرت مكانه منك, and then I remembered his rank and his position in relation to you. فأمسكت عن كل شيء, so I refrained from every reaction that I was contemplating. حتى عن الجواب على سؤاله, even responding to his question. فمشى, so he walked, يضرب الأرض, pacing, hitting the ground with his cane, وبقدمه, with his foot, حتى دنا مني, until he came close to me. وألقى علي تلك النظرة التي اعتاد الأشراف المترفعون أن يلقوها في طريقهم على وجوه النساء العاهرات. Until he came near to me, he came close to me, دنا مني, and he looked at me with that same gaze that noble people that look down on others look with, that they cast those gazes in their past on the faces of fallen women. وقال لقد أنفق ولدي عليك جميع ما كان بيده من المال. He said, my son has spent on you all of the wealth that he had in his possession. وكان في يده الكثير منه, and he had a great deal of wealth in his possession. ثم جميع ما أرسلته إليه بعد ذلك, on top of that he spent all of what I've sent to him after that. وقد أرسلت إليه فوق طاقتي, and I have sent to him more than I could bear. فلم يبق في استطاعته أن يمدك بأكثر مما أمدك, and it is no longer within his power to support you with more than what he's already supported you. ولا في استطاعتي أن أستنزل له من السماء ذهبا يمطره عليك, and neither is it in my power to bring down for him from the sky gold so that he could shower it upon you. فدعيه, so leave him alone. فدعيه وشأنه, leave him alone. فالبلد مملوء بالأبناء الذين لا يحتاج آباؤهم إليهم, because the city is full of sons whose fathers are not in need of them. والذين لا يحتاجون إلى أنفسهم, and also people that are not in need of themselves. أما أنا, as for me, فإني في حاجة إلى ولدي, I am in need of my son. لأني لم أرزق ولدا سواه, because I have not been granted a son other than him. He's my only son. ومن كانت بيده هذه الثروة من الجمال التي تملكينها لا يضيق به مذهب من مذاهب العيش ولا يتلوى ولا يتلوى عليه مأرب من مآرب الحياة. And whoever possesses the level of this treasure of beauty, whoever possesses this treasure of beauty that you have, such an individual, there's no path of livelihood that's tight and difficult for them. In other words, you'll be able to survive on your own because you have this beauty that you could bargain with. وَلَا يَتَلَوَّى عَلَيْهِ مَأْرَبٌ مِّن مَآرِبِ الْحَيَاةِ. And there's no objective and goal of life that would be difficult for that person to attain. فَسَرَتْ كَلِمَاتُهُ فِي نَفْسِي. So his words penetrated into my soul. سَرَيَانِ الْحُمَّى فِي عِظَامِ الْمَحْمُومِ. Similar to how fever penetrates into the bones of the person who's sick. وَخُيِّلَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّ هَذَا الْمَاثِلِ, I think it should be ماثل. And I imagined, or it appeared to me, that this still individual statue standing in front of me, لا يحدثني, is not speaking to me. وإنما يجرعني السم بيده تجريعا. And what he's really doing is he's forcing poison into me with his own hand. وشعرت بذلة لم أشعر بمثلها في يوم من أيام حياتي. And I felt a sense of embarrassment and a sense of shame that I had, the like of which I had never felt in any day of my life. إلا أنني تجلدت واستمسكت ورددت نفسي على مكروهها. Except I remained composed and I did not react, and I was able to keep myself from losing it. ورددت نفسي, and I thwarted myself in spite of the unpleasant circumstances, something along those lines. وقلت له بصوت هادئ ساكن, and I said to him in a low composed voice, لا يمازجه غضب, in which there was no mixture of anger, ولا نزق. Okay, I'm not sure what that word means. يا سيدي, sir. نعم إنني أحب ولدك. Yes, it's true that I do love your son. ولكني لا أطمع فيه. However, I'm not greedy, and it's not anything in particular that I'm desiring from him. لا أطمع فيه. ولو كان الذي يعنيني منه الطمع في ماله. And if the thing that concerned me the most was coveting his wealth, or being greedy and wanting, in other words, if I was a gold digger, لفارقته منذ ثلاثة شهور, then I would have abandoned him, left him 3 months ago. أي منذ خلت يده من المال. In other words, since his hand became empty of wealth. وأصبح لا يجد السبيل إليه بحال من الأحوال. And he ended up in a position where he's no longer capable of gaining any wealth in any way at all. So the moment I realized that, I would have left him. بل لفارقته قبل ذلك. In fact, I would have left him way before that. لأن الذين لا يزالون يساومونني في نفسي. Because those other individuals, the noble people of this city and the rich and wealthy, who are bargaining with me in order to get my soul, those individuals, منذ اتصلت به, from the time that I entered into a relationship with him until today, are way better. أفضل منه. All of those people are أفضل منه وأكثر رغدا, and more affluent, more wealthy. على أن ولدك لم ينفق علي من هذا المال. Not to mention, your son did not spend on me all of this wealth. الذي تذكره, that you're talking about. إلا النزر القليل, except maybe a small amount. وربما أنفق باقيه على نفسه, and perhaps he spent the rest of it on himself. ولو استطعت أن أرفض ذلك القليل وآباه لفعلت. And if I was able to refuse that small amount that he did spend on me, and refuse it, أرفض آباه, synonyms. أرفض, and this is أبا يأبى, and يأبى becomes أبا in the متكلم. وآباه لفعلت. ولكني كنت أظن به. However, I was extremely protective of him. كنت أظن به أن يداخل نفسه ما يريبها, that something that could cause him distress or something that could pain him enter into his soul, penetrate into his soul. فقبلت منه هداياه الصغيرة. So I accepted from him his small little gifts. الصغيرة الصغيرة التي كان يقدمها إلي من حين إلى حين, that he used to present to me from time to time. إرعاء عليه وإبقاء على عزة نفسه, as a compassion for him, and in order to preserve his self-dignity and his honor. على عزة نفسه وكرامتها. ولو أن ما كان بيده من المال انتقل إلى يدي, and had it been the case that all of the wealth that was in his hands transferred over to my hands, كما تقول, as you're claiming, لأصبحت غنية موفورة, then I would have become an incredibly wealthy woman. لا أحمل هما, not carrying any anxiety, من هموم العيش, of life, ولا وعاني, and not suffering, من بأساء الحياة وضرائها, from the misery and the calamity and the hardships of life, ما وعانيه اليوم, that I am today suffering from. فإنني, because I, لو تبينت أمري, if you truly knew my affair, am امرأة فقيرة معوزة, am a poor, destitute woman. لا أملك من متاع الدنيا, I do not own from the wealth of this world other than my jewelry. إلا حلايا ومركبتي, and my carriage, وأثاث بيتي, and the furniture of my home. وليتها كانت خالصة لي, and if only all of these things were purely mine. In other words, they're not even fully mine. فقد امتدت يد الضرورة إليها, because the hand of necessity has reached to these possessions of mine. منذ عهد قريب, since recently. منذ عهد قريب فأصبح الكثير منها. So a great deal of these things are actually سلعة في يد المرابين, are collateral, or are سلعة في يد المرابين, are spoken for from the creditors. ولا أعلم ما يأتي به الغد, and I am not sure what tomorrow brings. وإن أبيت إلا أن أتعرف ذلك بنفسك. There should be أن تعرف ذلك بنفسك, and this Hamza seems to be a mistake. وإن أبيت, and if you insist that you recognize and know all of this yourself, فسأطلعك, then I will show you على ما كتمته عن الناس جميعا, all of what I've concealed from the people, حتى عن والدك, and concealed from even your son. ثم قمت إلى خزانة أوراقي, and then I stood and went to my filing cabinet. فجئته منها بالسكوك, so I brought to her all of the bills and the final notices, والوثائق المشتملة على بيعي, and all of the receipts that spoke about the selling of all of my jewelry and all of my horses and all of the furniture of my home that I sold and the things that I pawned. ورهن ما رهنت منها. Right? Okay. ثم قمت إلى خزانة أوراقي فجئته منها بالصكوك والوثائق المشتملة على بيع ما بعت من جواهري وخيولي وأثاث بيتي ورهن ما رهنت منها. فظل يقلبها بين يديه ساعة. So he kept going through those documents in front of him for quite some time, for an hour, for a moment. It could mean moment, it could mean hour. ويتأمل في تاريخها, and he was paying particular attention to their dates طويلا, for a long period of time. ثم طواها, and then he folded them back up. وأعادها إلي, and he returned them to me. مطرقا صامتا, looking down and quiet. لا يقول شيئا, not saying anything. ومد يده إلى كرسي بين يديه, and he extended his hand to a chair in front of him. فاجتذبه إليه, and he pulled it to himself. وجلس عليه, and he sat on the chair. معتمدا برأسه على عصاه, leaning his head on his cane. وقد هدأت في نفسه تلك الثورة التي كانت تضطرم وتعترج منذ دخوله, and that particular fire that was burning and they both mean the same thing, تضطرم وتعترج, and since his entry had subsided, قد هدأت, within his soul. وطارت عن وجهه تلك الغبرة السوداء, and that black cloud that was shadowing over his face had flown away. من قبل فعدت إلى حديثي معه أقول. So I returned to my conversation with him saying, على أنني يا سيدي غير شاكية ولا ناقمة. In spite of all of that, O sir, I am not bitter and I am not complaining. فقد مر بي من نوب الأيام وأرزائها ما محا من نفسي كل شهوة من شهوات الحياة وأنساني جميع مظاهر الدنيا ومفاخرها. Because you can imagine the amount of difficulties that the days have brought, the pains, the amount of pain and the amount of difficulties that have passed over me. There's so many. Okay, let me translate this properly. فقد مر بي من نوب الأيام وأرزائها ما. So that ma there is the fa'il for marra. So of the calamities, nuwab means calamities, arzat means catastrophes. Of the calamities and the catastrophes of the days, so many have passed by me. You can't imagine. So many have passed by me that have wiped away from my nafs every desire from the desires of life. وأنساني جميع مظاهر الدنيا ومفاخرها, and have caused me to forget all of the good things of the world and all of the things that one would be proud of. فأصبحت لا أبالي. So I'm now in a position where I don't care. بما تأتي به الأيام, what the days bring. وسواء لدي الفقر والغنى. And in my estimation, لدي, in my estimation, poverty and wealth are both equal. There's no difference. والحليك والعطر. And jewelry and perfume, and none of these things matter anymore to me. وسكن القصر وسكن الكوخ, and the residence of a palace and a castle, and the residence of a hut. وركوب المركبة, and boarding a carriage or boarding shoes. Okay. وركوب المركبة وركوب النعل, whether I'm able to transport myself in luxury or whether I have to walk on my feet. None of it makes any difference. وكل ما أرجوه من حياتي وأضرع إلى الله وأضرع إلى الله وإليك فيه أن أرى أرمان يقاسمني هم الحياة وبؤسها ويعينني على شدتها ولأوائها حتى يقضي الله في أمري بما هو قاض. فإن كان في الأجل فسحة قضيتها في شكرك وحمدك والإخلاص لك في سري وعلمي. وكل ما أرجوه, and the extent of what I hope from this life, and regarding which I supplicate and beseech to Allah and to you, is to see Armand simply share with me in the anxieties of life and its difficult circumstances, that the two of us are able to comfort each other. وَيُعِينُنِي, and for him to assist me against the hardships of life, وَلَأْوَائِهَا, and its calamities, حَتَّى يَقْضِيَ اللَّهُ فِي أَمْرِي بِمَا هُوَ قَادٍ, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees in my matter whatever He chooses to decree. فَإِنْ كَانَ فِي الْأَجَلِ فُسْحَةٌ, so if there is some light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, قَضَيْتُهَا, I will spend the rest of my life فِي شُكْرِكَ وَحَمْدِكَ, in your gratitude and in your praise, وَالْإِخْلَاصِ لَكَ, and in being sincere to you, فِي سِرِّي وَعِلْمِي, in my private and also in my public life. في سري وعلمي. وإن كانت الأخرى, and if the other happens to occur, كان آخر ما أنطق به في ساعتي الأخيرة أن أدعو لك الله تعالى ضارعة مبتهلة أن يبارك لك في نفسك وفي أهلك وأن يسبل ستره الضافي عليك في حاضرك ومستقبلك. And if the other were to happen, then my last words that I speak in the last moments of my life is that I supplicate on your behalf to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ضارعة مبتهلة, humble and beseeching Him that He bless you in your soul and in your family, and that He veil over you his his um, his covering, both in your present as well as in your future. وأن يثبت ستره الضافية عليك في حاضرك ومستقبلك. ثم جثوت بين يديه وتعلقت بأهداب ثوبه. And then I kneeled in front of him and I grabbed on to the edges of his robe. وقد عجزت في تلك الساعة عن أن أملك من دموعي ما كنت مالكة من قبل. And at that moment, I was incapable of holding back the tears that I was holding back earlier. فظللت أبكي, so I began crying. وأقول, and saying, رحماك, have mercy on me, O sir, يا مولاي. إنني امرأة بائسة مسكينة. I am a woman that is destitute and poor and suffering greatly. قد قضت علي بعض ضرورات العيش في فاتحة حياتي. Some of the necessities of life in my earlier youth had judged against me that I stand at the edge of an abyss. أن أقف على حافة تلك الهوة التي يقف على رأسها النساء الجائعات. At the head of which hungry, starving women often stand. فسقطت فيها, so I fell into that abyss. كارهة مرغمة, grudgingly and unwillingly. ثم أردت نفسي على الرضا بتلك الحياة, and then I tried to force myself to become content with that lifestyle. التي قدرها الله لي, that Allah had decreed for me. فلم أستطع, I was not able. فأصبحت في منزلة بين المنزلتين, so I ended up in a position between two positions. في منزلة بين المنزلتين. لا أنا شريفة, neither was I honorable. أنعم بعيش نساء الشريفات, able to derive blessing and pleasure from the life of honorable women. ولا ميتة القلب, neither was I a woman whose heart was dead. أسعد, deriving happiness from the life of fallen women. سعادة, in the way that some corrupt fallen women sometimes are happy. وقد وجدت في ولدك الرجل الوحيد, and within your son I found the single man الذي أحبني, who loved me for myself. ومنحني من وده وإخلاصه, and he gifted to me of his love and of his sincerity. ما ظن به على الناس جميعا, that which he was not willing to give to anyone else from among the people, that he guarded security from all other people. فأنست به أنسا أنساني سقوطي وعاري, so I became so comfortable with him that level of comfort, it made me forget my own fall and my own shame. وحبب إلي الحياة بعدما أبغضتها, and renewed within me a love for life after I had hated it. And وبرمت بها, and sort of برمت بها, I was done with life. وكدت أقضي على نفسي and I was close to killing myself in order to free myself from that life. In other words, commit suicide. فلا تحرمني جواره, so do not deprive me of his companionship. ولا تفرق بيني وبينه, and do not create separation between myself and between him. فإنك إن فعلت, because if you do that, أشقيتني, you would throw me into wretchedness. وبرحت بي, and you would be murdering me, so to speak. Okay, now some of these words, I'm just guessing the vocabulary. I'm not entirely sure what they mean, but I think you get the point, right? And I mentioned this in the earlier session, that the point here is not to look up every single word. Okay, I mean, you just get the gist of what he's talking about and move on. وَمَلَأْتَ حَيَاتِي هَمَدًا وَكَمَدًا, and you will have filled my life with anxiety and worry. وَأَنْتَ أَجَلُّ, and you are more dignified and honorable. مِنْ أَنْ ترضى لنفسك بأن تبني سعادتك وهناءك على شقاء امرأة مسكينة مثلي. And you are more righteous, more honorable and dignified than to be happy for yourself of building your own happiness and your own comfort on the misery of a poor woman like myself. ماذا يكون مصيري غدا? What will be my fate tomorrow? إذا أصبحت وحيدة منقطعة في هذا العالم, when I'm left alone, severed from all others within this world, لا صديق لي, with no friend, ولا معين, and no assistant, أعود إلى حياتي التي أبغضها وأخشاها. Do you expect me to return to that earlier life that I hate so much and I fear? فأعود إلى جرائمي وآثامي, so I return to my crimes and my sins. أم أقتل نفسي بيدي فرارا, or do I kill myself with my own hand in order to flee from the misery of the world, وبلائها, and its tribulations. فأختم حياتي, so I end my life, بأقبح ما ختم امرؤ به حياته, through the worst possible way a human could end their life. ما ختم امرؤ به حياته, لا أستطيع واحدة من هاتين, I am not capable of either one of these two things. فامدد إلي يدك البيضاء, so extend to me your white hand, وأنقذني من هذه الهوة العميقة, and rescue me from this deep abyss. التي لا يستطيع أحد أن ينقذني منها سواك, from which no one is able to rescue me other than you. أنا أعلم أنك في حاجة إلى ولدك, I know that you are in need of your son, وأنك أولى به من كل مخلوق على وجه الأرض, and that you are more worthy of him than every creation on the face of the earth. ولكني أعلم أنك شفوق رحيم, however I also know that you are compassionate and merciful. لا تأبى أن تتصدق على امرأة مريضة بائسة مثلي بساعات من السعادة تتعلل بها في مرضها الذي تكابده حتى يوافيها جلها. However, I know that you are compassionate and merciful, and you do not refuse, لا تأبى, you do not refuse to be charitable to a sick, miserable woman like myself, with a few hours of happiness with which she can comfort herself within her sickness that she's suffering from and she's experiencing, until death takes over and yuwafiyaha ajaluha, until her appointed time of death arrives. لا أسألك يا سيدي مالا, I'm not asking of you, O sir, for any wealth, nor for any lineage, nor for any of the material things of this world, ولا نسبا ولا عرضا من أعراض الحياة, بل أسألك أن تأذن لأرمان بالبقاء معي. All I'm asking is that you permit Armand to remain with me, فإن بقاءه بقاء حياتي وسعادتي, because his remaining is the remaining of my life and my happiness. فتصدق بهما, so grant me these two things as a charity. إنك من المحسنين, verily you are of those that extend good and extend favor. وهنا شعرت كأنه يتحرك, because she's speaking in the first person, right? So it's not going to be شعرت, it's going to be شعرت. And at that occasion, I sensed as if he's moving within his chair. كأنه يتحرك في كرسيه فخفق قلبي خفقانا شديدا. So my heart began beating violently. ثم رفع رأسه, and then he raised his head, ونظر إلي نظرة, and he looked to me with a look, أهدأ نارا, which was cooler, وأخسر شعاعا, and which was less piercing than his earlier gaze. وقال ومن أين تعيشان, he said, how would you live? From where would you live? In other words, what's your source of livelihood? قلت عندي بقية من جواهري وحلايا. Okay, so this is going to get good. Okay, we're going to keep going inshallah. قلت عندي. Okay, now let me know in the comments, like, how do you like the pace? Is it too slow? Is it too fast? Okay, and reference the timestamp. Okay, like when you're responding to this. قلت, because we're about halfway there through the story. Like, I mean, I can ditch it and not finish it, but I wouldn't feel right with myself if I did that. We're going to complete this. And then there's a lot more. And the point here is that you see me do it and you gain some confidence, and then maybe you get to a level where you can do it yourself with the help of dictionaries and with the help of AI. But you got to have a background in grammar before you're able to do that, because AI can suggest to you wrong meanings if you're not careful. Is that okay? and it will reinforce bad habits. قلت عندي بقية من جواهري وحلايا. She said, I said, I have some remaining jewelry and pearls and things like that. سأبيعها, I'll sell them all. وأعيش بثمنها معه, and we will live with the price that I receive from my remaining jewelry, along with Armand. في زاوية من زوايا باريس, in some suburb of Paris, or some corner of Paris. عيش الفقراء, not suburb, some corner of Paris. عيش الفقراء المقلين, the way in which poor broke people live. لا يرانا أحد, no one needs to see us. ولا يشعر بوجودنا شاعر, and no person needs to even be aware that we even exist. وحسبنا الحب سعادة, and enough for us is love as a source of happiness. نغنى بها عن كل سعادة في هذا العالم وهنائه. Through this love we will be sufficient, and we will not be in any need of any other happiness within this world or any other comfort. قال ذلك هو الشقاء بعينه. Duval replied, and he said that is misery personified. In other words, that's the essence of misery, what you just described. فإن الحب نبات ظلي تقتله شمس الشقاء الحارة. Because love is a delicate plant that needs to be kept in the shade, killed by the scorching heat, scorching sun of misery. The scorching sun of misery will kill it. وكل سعادة في العالم غير مستمدة من سعادة المال أو لاجئة إلى ظلاله فهي كاذبة. And every happiness within this world that does not derive from the happiness of wealth, or does not rely on the shadows of wealth, فهي كاذبة. It's false. It's false love. لا وجود لها, it doesn't exist. إلا في سوانح الخيال, except within imagination, within the realm of imagination. أنتما اليوم سعيدان, the two of you are happy today. لأن في يدكما مالا تعيشان به, because in your hand is wealth that you're able to live off of. ولأنكما تسكنان هذا المنزل البديع, and because the two of you are residing in this beautiful home. فوق هذه الهضبة العالية, above this high hill. بجانب هذه البحيرة الجميلة, adjacent to this beautiful little stream. فإذا خلت يدكما من المال, so when your hands are empty of wealth. وحرمتما هذا النعيم, and you're deprived of this beauty or of this blessing. الذي تنعمان به شقيتما, that you are currently enjoying, the two of you will become miserable. شقيتما. وشغلكما شأن نفسيكما عن شأن الحب ولذائذه, and your own personal affairs will preoccupy and distract you from the matter of love and the pleasures of love. وسرى إلى نفسيكما الضجر والملل, and weariness and boredom and will penetrate into your souls. وربما امتدت تلك السآمة بينكما إلى أبعد غايتها, and perhaps this unpleasant weariness between you will move to its extent, its possible extent, its furthest possible extent. إن للحب فنونا من الجنون, that love has many levels, has many فنونا من الجنون. إن للحب فنونا من الجنون وأقبح فنونه أن يعتقد المحبان. So love has many facets of madness, and the worst and ugliest of its facets is that two lovers are actually believing that their love is eternal. أن حبهما دائم لا تغيره حوادث الأيام, that the calamities of life, the tribulations of life will not alter it. ولا تنال منه الصروف والغبر, and that difficult circumstances will not cut into the love. وَلَوْ عَقَلَا, and if the two of them were to realize and to know, or to use their minds, if the two of them were to use their minds, لَعَلِمَ أَنَّ الْحُبَّ لَوْنٌ مِّنْ أَلْوَانِ النَّفْسِ, they would know that love is no more than a لَوْنٌ مِّنْ أَلْوَانِ النَّفْسِ. It's one of the colors of the soul. وَعَرْضٌ مِّنْ أَعْرَاضِهَا الطَّائِرَةِ, and one of its temporary attributes that are fleeting and come and go. تَأْتِي بِهِ شَهْوَةٌ, there's a desire that brings it, and there's another desire that takes it away. وَلَا يَذْهَبُ بِهِ. Okay, now there seems to be some typographical errors here. وَلَا يَذْهَبُ بِهِ مِثْلُ الْفَاقَةِ. I think this al-mithlu here is a mistake, and it should just be مِثْلُ الْفَاقَةِ. And there's nothing that removes love similar to poverty. إِذَا اشْتَدَّتْ, when it becomes severe. وَاسْتَحْكَمَتْ حَلْقَاتُهَا, and when its rings are tightened. فَإِنَّ النَّفْسَ تُطَالِبُ حَيَاتَهَا وَبَقَاءَهَا, because the human soul wants more than anything to live and preservation. قَبْلَ أَن تَطْلُبَ لَذَائِذَهَا وَشَهْوَاتِهَا, and it desires preservation way before it desires the pleasures of life and the shahwat. أَنَا أَعْلَمُ مِنْ شَأْنِ وَلَدِي يَا سَيِّدَتِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمِينَ. He says, I know the situation of my son, Madame, way more than you do. I know certain things that you do not know. وَأَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ أَنْ يَعِيشَ هَذِهِ الْعِيشَةَ النَّكْدَاءَ الَّتِي تَظُنِّينَ وَهُوَ فَتًى فَخِيرٌ. I know that he is not able to live this difficult lifestyle that you are claiming to be able to. تَظُنِّينَ وَهُوَ فَتًى, and he is a poor young man. لَا يَمْلِكُ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, that does not really own anything from the world. إِلَّا قِطْعَةً صَغِيرَةً مِنَ الْأَرْضِ, except a small plot of land. وَرِثَهَا عَنْ أُمِّهِ, that he inherited from his mother. لَا تُغْنِي عَنْهُ وَلَا عَنْكِ شَيْئًا, and that will not relieve anything significant from himself, and it will not avail himself or will not avail you at all. وَمَا أَنَا بِذِي ثَرْوَةٍ طَائِلَةٍ, and I myself am not a person of unlimited wealth. أَسْتَطِيعُ أَنْ أَحْفَظَ لَهُ, capable of providing for him, زَمَنًا طَوِيلًا, for any long duration, any long period of time. هذا العيش السعيد الرغد, this beautiful happy life, الذي يعيشه اليوم في باريس, today, which he is living today in Paris. فلم يبق بين يديه إلا أن يعيش بمالك. So there's no option remaining for him, in front of him, except to live with your wealth. وهو ما لا أرضاه له, and this is something that I cannot be happy with for him, neither can he be happy with that for himself. واسمحي لي, and forgive me, Madame, أن أقول لك, that I say to you. Now he's going to say something really cruel, right? إن جميع مصائب الدنيا وأرزائها أهون علي وعليه. All of the calamities and pains and tribulations of this world are easier to bear for me and for him than for the people to say the following. أن يقول الناس إن خليلة أرمان, that Armand's girlfriend, Armand Duval's girlfriend, قد باعت جواهرها وحولاها, sold all of her jewelry and all of her pearls. التي أهداها إليها عشاقها الماضون, that her previous lovers had gifted to her in order that she could spend its price on him. لتنفق ثمنها عليه. سامحيني يا بنيتي, forgive me, O daughter. واغتفري لي حدتي وخشونتي, and overlook my bluntness and my dryness and rudeness. فإن شديدا جدا على والد شيخ, because it's extremely difficult for an old man like myself, أن يرى ولده الذي ودع فيه كل آمال بيته, to see his only son in which he's placed all of the hopes of his household, يهوى, for him to fall, أمام عينيه, in front of his own eyes, في هذه الهوة السحيقة, within this deep abyss, التي لا قرار لها, where there's a bottomless pit. in this bottomless pit. That's what he's saying. لا قرار لها دون أن يطير قلبه خوفا وهلعا, without his own heart. In other words, old man, his own heart leaving and flying out of fear and out of distress. خوفا وهلعا. أنه مذ عرفك نسيني. Since he met you, he's forgotten me, and he's forgotten his own sister. ونسي أخته فلا يذكرني ولا يذكرها. He doesn't remember me, he doesn't remember her. وقد مرضت منذ شهور, and since the last few months, I became sick. مرضا مشرفا, with a terminal illness. فكتبت إليه, I wrote to him, أن يأتي, to come and to visit me. ليعودني فلم يفعل, and he didn't do that. ولم يرد علي كتابي, nor did he even respond to my letter. أي أنني كنت على وشك أن أموت. I was on the verge of dying. كنت على وشك أن أموت ولا أراه, and not able to see him. ولو تم ذلك, and had that happened, لذهبت إلى قبري بحسرة, I would have taken to my grave a level of grief. لم يحمل مثلها في صدره راحل عن الدنيا من قبلي. I would have taken to my grave a level of grief, the like of which no departer had ever carried within his chest. No person departing from the dunya before me had ever carried in his chest. أنت صادقة يا سيدتي. You're speaking the truth, madam. في قولك, in your statement, إنه لم ينفق عليك جميع ما كان بيده من المال, that he didn't spend on you all of the wealth that he had in his hand. لأنني علمت بالأمس, because I came to know just yesterday, أنه قامر, that he began gambling away his money. منذ عهد قريب, since recently, since the last few days, he's been engaged in gambling. وخسر في مقامرته كثيرا, and he suffered great losses in this gambling of his. كما علمت, similar to how I know that you are unaware of any of that. In other words, this is a habit of his that he's kept to himself. I've come to know of it, you don't know of it. كما علمت أنك لا تعلمين شيئا من ذلك فما يؤمنني. So what guarantee do I have? How can I be sure? إن أنا تركته في هذا البلد, that if I were to leave him in this city, ألا يستمر في هذه الغواية الجديدة, that he not continue in this new misguidance of his. التي خطى الخطوات الأولى في طريقها, that he's already taken the first steps in its path. ولا يخسر في بعض مواقفه, and in some of his episodes of gambling, what guarantee do I have that he will not suffer an even greater loss? خسارة عظمى لا أجد لي بدا, that I will have no choice but to take him by the hand and rescue him from that. فأقدم إليه, then I'm forced to give to him ذخر شيخوختي, my own nest egg, so to speak. ذخر شيخوختي ومهر ابنتي, and the dowry of my daughter's future marriage. فنهلك نحن ثلاثة, so all three of us end up perishing in a single day. من أين لك يا بنيتي, how are you so sure, dear daughter, أنه إن طال عهده بك لا يملك ولا تمتد عينه إلى امرأة سواك فتكون فجيعتك فيه غدا شرا من فجيعتك فيه اليوم. So how are you so sure, من أين لك, so this expression, from where do you know, from where, okay, like I think the earlier translation is better. How are you so sure, O daughter, that if the time طال عهده بك, that his time with you prolongs, that he will not be able to control himself, and his eye will not waver to some other woman besides you, and in other words, he'll cheat on you. فَتَكُونُ فَجِيعَتُكِ, and your calamity with respect to him tomorrow will be worse than your calamity with respect to him today. In other words, it's better to just sever relations now than to let things move forward and something even worse happen in the future. وَمِنْ أَيْنَ لَهُ, and what guarantee does he have? وَمِنْ أَيْنَ لَهُ, or you can say, and how can he be so sure? How can you be so sure was the top one. مِنْ أَيْنَ لَكِ وَمِنْ أَيْنَ لَهُ, and how can he be so sure that you will not لا تذيقين ضرعا, that you will not become fed up of him. يوما من الأيام, on some day, بعيشة الوحشة, because of the life of solitude and loneliness, فتحنين إلى حياتك الأولى, and then you incline to your previous life, the life of socialization and the life of social gatherings, والضوضاء واللجب, and glamour and attention. وهو فتى غيور مستطار, and he is a youth, a young man that has dignity and that will not be able to, and he's jealous. غيور مستطار, a jealous man that will not be able to control himself. فربما أنفت نفسه أن يزاحمه فيك مزاحم. So أنفت فربما أنفت نفسه أن يزاحمه فيك مزاحم. So perhaps his soul will feel it, perhaps his soul will be incapable of a dispute, of some opposition trying to have a share within you. Okay, like فربما أنفت نفسه أن يزاحمه فيك مزاحم, that there's some disputant that lays claim over you, and he'll not be able to tolerate that. وربما امتدت يده بشر, and perhaps his hand will extend with some evil intention to that muzahim, to that person who's trying to take you away from him. فتنازلا, and then there's a duel between the two of them. فأصابته من يد منازله ضربة تقضي على حياته, and perhaps from the hand of this adversary he receives a blow that ends his life. وتفجعني فيه, and causes me grief in that regard. Right? كيف يكون موقفك? What will be your reaction? يا سيدتي غدا, tomorrow, إن نفذ فيه هذا السهم من القضاء, if this arrow from the divine decree were to penetrate into him, أمام هذا الأب الثاكل المسكين, in front of this poor bereaved father. إذا جاءك, when that bereaved father comes to you asking you for the blood of his child. وكيف تكون آلام نفسك ولواعجها, and how intense and severe will be your own personal pain and your own emotional distress. أمام مشهد بكائه, in front of the scene of that father's crying and that father's grieving. مشهد بكائه وتفجعه. ثم ارتعش ارتعاشا شديدا, and then he shook violently. وظل نظره حائرا مضطربا, and his sight became confused and scattered. كأنما يخيل إليه, as if he's imagining أنه يرى أمام عينيه, that he's seeing in front of his eyes. ذلك المنظر الذي يتحدث عنه, that very scene that he's so eloquently describing. ثم سكن قليلا, and then he became quiet. ونظر إلي نظرة هادئة, and then he looked to me with a calm look, in a calm manner that was full of compassion, عطفا وحنانا, and love. وأنشأ يقول, and he began saying the following. He said, Marguerite, أنت أعظم في عيني مما كنت أظن. You are far greater in my estimation than I thought earlier. مما كنت أظن. وأكرم نفسا, and you have a more dignified soul. من أولئك النساء اللواتي, than all of these other women. يزعمن أنك واحدة منهن, that claim that you are one of them. وقد وجدت فيك من فضائل النفس, and I have found within you from the virtues of the soul, ومزاياها, and its special qualities and characteristics, ما لم أجده, such that I have not found, إلا قليلا في أفذاذ الرجال, except maybe a few of them in exceptional men. وأقل من القليل, and even less than that, في فضليات النساء, in virtuous women. وَلَوْ قُسِّمَ الشَّرَفُ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, and if honor and dignity were to be distributed among the people, عَلَى مِقْدَارِ فَضَائِلِهِمْ وَصِفَاتِهِمْ, in accordance to the level of their virtues and their merits and their good admirable qualities, لَكَانَ نَصِيبُكِ مِنْهُ أَوْفَرَ الْأَنْصِبَةِ وَأَوْفَاهَا, then your share would be an extremely significant and large share. Okay, let me reread that again. He says, Marguerite, أنت أعظم في عيني مما كنت أظن وأكرم نفسا من أولئك النساء اللواتي يزعمن أنك واحدة منهن وقد وجدت فيك من فضائل النفس ومزاياها ما لم أجده إلا قليلا في أفضاد الرجال. أفضاد الرجال, like exceptional man. وأقل من القليل في فضليات النساء ولو قسم الشرف بين الناس على مقدار فضائلهم وصفاتهم لكان نصيبك منه أوفر الأنصبة وأوفاها. لا أنسى لك يا مرغريت ما دمت حيا كتمانك أمر الكتاب الذي أرسلته إليك. I will never forget, Marguerite, as long as I'm alive, your concealing of the matter of that letter that I sent to you, واحتفاظك بسره, and your protecting its secret, في ساعة تنفرج فيها الصدور عن مكنوناتها, within the hour in which chests start revealing all of the hidden secrets. Like other people would have just revealed it. ولا سكوتك, and I will never forget your remaining silent, وإغضاءك, and your overlooking while you are within your home and while you are within the place where it is your command and your prohibition that counts. أمام حدتي, in front of my sharp, rude speech, my dryness, وجنون غضبي, and the madness of my anger. I will never forget any of that. That you remain quiet in the face of all of this. ولا سكوتك وإغضاءك وأنت في منزلك وموضع أمرك ونهيك أمام حدتي. So this أمام حدتي is maful fi for the sukut word. You're remaining quiet in the face of. You're remaining quiet in the face of my hidda, my sharpness, my khushuna, my dryness, and the madness of my anger. Wala. Okay, what do you think this is? Wala. Okay, now look at this verb here. Wala bazluki ma bazalti. Okay, now would you have been able to detect that? Post in the comments, let me know. Wala bazluki ma bazalti. Nor your spending what you spent, nor your generously giving the things that you gave. Badl. Wala bazluki. Like apparently it looks like bidhalika, the be preposition, that's not what it is. ولا بذلك ما بذلتي من ذات نفسك وذات يدك لولدي. Nor your generously spending all of what you spent من ذات نفسك, from your own self, from your personal self, and from the personal belongings of yours, وذات يدك, for my son. من حيث لا يعلم, where he wasn't even aware. وفاء له, in loyalty to him, وإبقاء على عزة نفسه وكرامتها, in order to preserve and protect his self-dignity and his honor and his respect. لقد كانت ضحيتك التي قدمتها, this sacrifice that you have put forward for my son yesterday, عظيمة جدا, it's extremely rare and great. واليوم جئتك أطلب إليك أن تقدمي ضحية أعظم منها. And today, I've come to you, seeking from you an even greater sacrifice. Libnati, for my daughter. ولا معتمد لي, and I have no person to rely on. أعتمد عليه في تلبية رجائي, that I could trust and rely on in the fulfillment of this hope. عندك, in your presence. تلبية رجائي عندك إلا شرف نفسك. The only thing that I can rely on is your own sharaf, وفضيلتها, and your virtue. And then he starts speaking about his daughter. And we're going to end it here. Okay, so I'm contemplating whether I should create the next section of this and just keep going and make it one long 7-hour video, or should I end it here and connect all of this together and upload it, and then 3-4 weeks later complete the story. I mean, why am I even telling you this? Because by the time you're watching this, then that decision will have already been made. At any rate, I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.